There are 67 Tier 10s available in World of Tanks Blitz. If you take out the Sheridan Missile, 66. If we go down to Tier 9, there are 63. And if we go down to Tier 8, there are 145 Tier 8s. Yes, you heard that correct. Now, why is that relevant? Well, we're doing a tier list of every Tier 8 in the game. All 140 Tier 8s. It took me an hour and a half to do my Tier 10 tier list. So, I have a feeling that this one's going to take a while. I am going to try and do this tier list quick, but not rushed, as in I'm going to say a brief description of the tank, where I think it fits, and then move on to the next one, and over and over and over 140 times. Just as a disclaimer, because for some reason people can't read, there are different gun variants that vehicles have. The T-34-2 has a 122mm, but it also has a 100mm, and both of these gun options can be viable. Because of that, I'll be ranking certain guns differently on the tier list here. When I did my previous Tier 10 tier list, and I ranked the Batchat with the 100mm 4-shot gun in workable, a lot of people thought I put the Batchat in workable, which wasn't the case. I put the 105mm in super strong and praised it quite a bit. But because people love to skip through the video all the way to the end and don't look, they just complain rather than actually using their brains. So, if you are one of those people, you're just a monkey. I don't know what else to say. You're probably not even listening to what I'm saying, but at least for the people that are listening to what I'm saying, you already know why I'm saying this. So, let's get into it. I don't want to waste any time. If you enjoy this, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. The things I do for you. So, WZ-112 Glacial. It's got a classic Soviet-style gun. It's inaccurate, it's got 400 alpha, but pretty good heat pen. The 112 has a really good frontal plate. It's one of the strongest in the game. Unfortunately, it's quite immobile, and it does have big hatches on the roof, which do bring it down a bit on its capabilities. While I don't think it's a bad tank in any means, I also don't think there's anything crazy about it, so it's going to go into the, we'll put it in the good category. I think it's a good tank, but that's as far as I'm going to be putting it. The 59 Patton is a Tier 8 Chinese premium medium. It's a vehicle which features solid DPM at 2,500 and very good penetration. It also features very good gun depression at 10 degrees and honestly pretty solid armor. It has a Type 59 hull with a pretty solid turret, which is much stronger than the T95E2. So when you pair all these things together, I actually think the 59 Patton goes into the strong category. I don't think it's super strong, but I do think that with the high heat pen, great accuracy, and solid DPM plus good armor, it's actually a pretty strong medium in general, and a very fun tank to play. Now, the BZ-166 has two different variants, and a lot of people don't realize this. The BZ-166 has two different guns, or not guns, sorry. It has one gun, but it has two different turrets. I actually don't have the vehicle purchased on this account, but you'll notice it has the 166 turret and the 166M. For any of you that are unaware, the BZ turret stock is better than the fully upgraded one. So this person must be a Droodles viewer, because when I talked about the vehicle in my video, I said how the stock turret features more armor, and that is the case. I think the BZ-166, with the top turret and the gun depression and everything else it has going for it, easily goes into the super strong category. People truly underestimate this tank's capabilities. The gun has crazy good heat pen, it's got decent dispersion when fully equipped, it's got a good mobility, 7 degrees of gun depression, and really good armor. I really like the BZ-166. I think that, as I said, it's actually a rather strong vehicle. With the upgraded turret, it's going into good. I don't think that the upgraded turret is good at all. You should not be running the tank with the upgraded turret. So that's why it's going to go into the good category. The T-34-2 with the 100mm, we are going to put into the workable category. The T-34-2 is meant to have a 122 on it. That's the whole point. If you're grinding for the 121, you're going to use the 122. I don't know why you would grind a tank that has 420 alpha in Tier 10 and then use the 100mm on the Tier 9 and 8. It just doesn't make sense. So it's going into workable. You can do okay with it, but there's really no point to use it, especially when the T44 line exists. Just get the T62A at that point. Now the 122 on the T34-2 is great. It's got fantastic penetration, it's got really good damage per shot, and decent accuracy now that we also have the refined gun buff. So all that's great. It's got a solid turret. The only real downside of the vehicle is that it doesn't feature an incredibly well-armored hull hull. In fact, its hull is one of the weakest in the game. But I still think it's actually a strong vehicle, so I'm going to be putting it into the strong category. I really like the tank, especially now that it has tungsten as well. It hits hard. In general, it's an incredible vehicle, so that's why it's going to go into strong. I don't think it makes it just in the super strong, but it is definitely a strong tank. Now, the T-34-3 has a bit more armor than the 34-2, but on the downside, it doesn't feature tungsten, and it's quite a bit slower on its acceleration. And because of that, I'm going to put it into the good category. I really like the T-34-2, but it has some disadvantages versus the T-30, or both, both have their advantages and disadvantages. If you want hull armor, you go for the T-34-3. But personally, I think mobility and having the tungsten is better for the tech tree tank, so that's why I'm putting the tech tree into the strong category and the T-34-3 into good. Type 59 is also going to be going into good. It's basically a better T-44. It's got a strong hull, a really good turret. It's got 7 degrees of gun depression, which means it can be flexible. It has really good standard pen, decent premium pen. Overall, it's a fun tank, it's a mobile tank, and it's a pretty good tank. I don't think it's anything past good, just because it has been quite outdated over the years, but I still think that it has some potential and is a rather capable tank if you know what you're doing. The WZ-110, I'll put it in good as well. I mean, the DPM is alright on the tank. It's got one of the higher DPM values for a tier 8. It's got decent accuracy, but lower alpha, only about 310 damage per shot. Really good penetration, though. And the armor on the tank is also pretty good. It's got a solid turret, and it's also got a really, really steep angled upper plate, which allows you to actually side scrape pretty effectively without over-angling your frontal plate. So in general, I like the 110. It does have downsides. It's not the best armor on the lower plate. It's actually quite weak. The sides are quite poor. And again, with its lower alpha, it is harder to deal with higher tier tanks. So that's why it's going into good. I actually enjoyed playing it. I remember when it was first released, it was absolutely incredible. But as of now, it's definitely been power crept a bit, so we'll put it into the good category. WZ-111 1GFT, easy, super strong. The tank features basically a tech tree Scorpion G-gun. It's got 460 alpha, great dispersion, fantastic DPM. The vehicle's got 8 degrees of gun depression, strong armor. It features, not tungsten, it features reactive armor, which is crazy good. And when you pair all of that with the fact that the tank also has 660 high explosive damage, it's one of the most fun tier 8s to play in the game. I can tell you for a fact that you will enjoy playing in the 111 1GFT. It is such a fun vehicle, so that is why it's going into super strong. The WZ-111 is the first tank. Oh, man. I don't think it's trash. But it's going to go into workable. I don't see any reason why you would ever buy the WZ-111. Like, the tank itself, it's just a worse 112 Glacial in, like, every way apart from 2 kilometers per hour of speed. But I just don't see any reason why you'd ever get the tank when the 112 Glacial has a better upper plate and lower plate with the same turret armor. It just doesn't make sense, so, yeah. It's going to go into workable. That's about as good as it's getting. WZ-112-2 is going to make it into super strong. Fantastic tier 8 heavy tank. It features a gun that is just as trash as the others. It's the same as the 112 Glacial or IS-5, but it has a really good armor profile. Its upper plate is about 270, its lower plate is about 210, and it's got an incredibly strong turret. It also features 20 reverse, which is incredibly good. That reverse speed is what puts it into super strong versus just strong. The 112-2 is definitely one of the best Soviet-style heavies in the game, and that's why we're going to be putting it into that category. WZ-121 GFT, it still goes into super strong. The vehicle features incredible DPM, really solid armor, fantastic mobility, and really good penetration. It's just a fantastic tank. It's a tier 10 gun mounted on a tier 8 tank destroyer. And while it has definitely been power crept, the biggest change that happened to the vehicle is when Wargaming increased the HP of all heavies. It definitely knocked the vehicle down a peg, because obviously with all heavies getting more health, it means that this tank has a harder time brawling heavies. But the advantage of this vehicle is that it gets more damage out. So if you know what you're doing in this tank, it's great. It's amazing. It's one of the best tier 8 tank destroyers in the game. That's why it goes into super strong. WZ-122 TM. This is a tricky one. I'm going to put the 122 TM into the super strong category. I actually really like the tank. I love the playstyle it features. It has a strong upper plate to the point where you're going to get bounces from a lot of tier... I would say the majority of tier 7s are going to bounce you. Even with gold, it's a super hard tank to pen. When you pair that with the fact that it has a great alpha of 400. It's a medium tank, so you basically get the role of a heavy, but you're a medium, which means you can play it like a medium, but if you need to, you can also support the heavies. So it's a pseudo role. It makes it really enjoyable to play. It's fairly accurate. It's got really good aiming time. Most Chinese mediums do. And when you pair that with the fact that it's got like 300 millimeters of heat now with the Cali changes, it's just a really fun tank. I thoroughly enjoy playing in it, and I have no complaints about the vehicle. Plus, it has a fantastic camo going for it, so yeah, I'm going to be putting it into the super strong category. The WZ-132 is a Tier 8 Chinese light tank on the tech tree, and it's going to go into the workable category. It's not a bad tank. I actually thought it was pretty fun to play, but I think for the majority of players out there, even if you're decent at the game, it's an alright tank. You know, I'll put it in a good. I think it's better than workable. I actually like the vehicle, and I think it's fun to mess around with, especially with the high alpha damage it has in Tier 8. But in terms of everything going for it, I really can't say there's anything too crazy, so we're just going to leave it in the good category. It's alright. It gets the job done. The 53 TP... Easy, super strong. I mean, that's not even a doubt in my mind. The tank has 8 degrees of gun depression. It has high alpha at 420. It features tungsten. It also has gear oil, allowing it to reverse upwards of 19 kilometers per hour, or even more. The tank is mobile. It's got everything you'd want going for it, and it's got frontal armor. I mean, in general, the 53 TP is an amazing tank. It's one of the funny vehicles where, you know, everybody always complains, oh, premium tanks are flat better than tech trees, and then you see a 53 TP roll up like, what was that? Couldn't hear you. I'm pretty confident I could do just as much damage in a 53 TP as I could in the 112-2, WZ-120, 122TM. A lot of people don't realize this as well, but the 53 TP actually has one of the fastest aiming times for a 400 alpha style heavy. It's actually insane. Highly recommend to try the vehicle out. Plus, the 60 TP itself is amazing, and the grind up to it with the 50 TP is great as well. So in general, get your hands on the 53 TP. If you're not grinding the 60 yet and you want a heavy to go for, please grind it. It's an amazing tank. The Bisante, we're going to put it into good, or not good, strong. I like the Bisante, and I think it has great characteristics, but it also has some downsides which take away from its capability. First of all, it loses DPM when you dump the clip, which is rather disappointing. I wish it was like the Rhino, where you basically have the same DPM whether you dump it or you shoot single shot. Not only does the vehicle lose DPM when you dump the clip, but it also doesn't have that effective armor. I mean, turret armor-wise, it's pretty good, but it's only pretty good if you're hull down, and on flat ground, it's pretty easy to cut through. Premium 8 PCR, and now that Heat got a buff, has an easier time cutting through you. But I like the Bisante. I think it's a pretty solid vehicle in general, and its mobility is very nice. It's just that I wish it had a little bit more effective DPM, and because of that, it's kind of iffy. But it's still a strong tank, which by no means is bad at all. That's why I'm putting it there. The CS-53, I don't really know much about the vehicle, to be honest, and it's kind of ugly, and I don't really care about it, so I'm just going to put it in workable. I literally have only played it like twice. Like, that's how little I care about the tank, because the CS-63 is mid, the Tier 9 CS-59 is pretty mid, so I'm just going to put the CS-53 in workable. I don't really care too much about it, and if it was something special, I would have already told you, so that's about as much as I can say. The Emil 1 is the Tier 8 Swedish Heavy, and ooh, I'm having a hard time picking this one. I'm very tempted to put it into the broken category. The Emil 1 features fantastic gun depression. It's got a really good clip, and it's just a great tank in general. And with the turret armor and everything it features, ooh, you know what? I'm going to leave it into the broken category. I think the Emil 1 really is an amazing tank, and I think people don't give it enough reputation as it deserves. I average close to 3,000 damage in the tank, and any tier 8 that I can average 3,000 and above in, I'm going to put into the unfair category. I think that's a good way to gauge my opinions. So the Emil 1, with the fact that it has a 960 damage clip, with the fact that it has super speed boost, it's got decent mobility as it is, 10 degrees of gun depression, and a turret that you need about 280 mils of heat to cut through. I just think it's an absolutely insane tank, and that's why we're going to be putting it into that, the first vehicle into the unfair category. The Emil 1951 is slightly worse than the tech tree, and I can tell you that for a fact. The gun is better. It features much better penetration on the premium and standard than the tech tree, but in return, it has a worse turret. It also has slightly better mobility, the Emil 1951, but again, armor is king. And if you can get hull down, The mill is just better. But that's not to say the 1951 is bad. It's still super strong. I love the tank. It's got a great gun. And in terms of enjoyment, I like the 1951 more. It's definitely a much more enjoyable tank to play. And that increased mobility paired with penetration can definitely save you in some Tier 9 battles. It's just a little unfortunate when you're fighting Tier 8 tank destroyers and they butter through your turret like its armor doesn't exist. That's definitely where you're going to wish you were in a Mill 1. The Lancen C, I'm going to put it into the strong category. People really underrate the Lancen. It's nothing insane, but it's got .308 dispersion base, and when you pair that with a 320 damage per shot gun, it's actually a rather fun vehicle to play. I do very well in it. In fact, I have the highest damage ever recorded in the vehicle at like 7,500. So personally, I have no negative experiences about the tank. Every time I play it, I really enjoy it. It's got an accurate gun, 10 degrees gun depression, and good mobility. When you pair those things together with a high alpha, it's fun. That's as much as I can say. If I have fun in a vehicle and I do well in it, it's going to make it into a decent standing. I don't think it's super strong. I think all the vehicles in super strong are better than the Lancen C, but I still think the Lancen itself is a really fun tank and quite capable. Now the P-44 Pantera, I'm going to put that in super strong. I really like the P-44 Pantera. It's got a really good gun. It's comparable to the Progetto 46. The Progetto features a high alpha, 240. The Pantera has 225. But what the Pantera gains the advantage of is much better standard pen, especially because it's AP standard, which just got buffed with Kali. And it's also got much better premium, or no, a similar premium pen. I'm not going to say much better. The premium pen is very similar, but the standard pen is way better on the Pantera. It also features a bit better mobility. When you combine those two things together, plus the fact that the Pantera actually got quite a large DPM buff in the latest update, it's actually a really, really nice vehicle. I personally love playing it. I have gotten 2 7-kill awards in that vehicle now. It's just a great tank, and it's going to go into super strong because of that. Progetto 46, it's tricky whether I want to put it in unfair or super strong. I think we're going to put it in super strong, right up there next to the P-44 Pantera. I think both of them are comparable. I like the Progetto because it has that high alpha damage. 240 means that you can deal upwards of 720 damage in a clip, which is quite incredible. But again, it doesn't have crazy good standard pen. Its turret armor is a little bit sussler. It's quite easy to high explosive as well. That's not to say the Pantera isn't, but there are definitely downsides of the Progetto that I feel like could obviously lose you a game, especially with vehicles like the T-77 and the Semovente Contracarro 64 existing. So it's a good tank, it's a great tank, and that's why it's going into super strong. I just don't think it's an unfair vehicle to go up against. The Shrek TVP, oh, easy super strong. I mean, it's got .29 dispersion, which alone is incredible. It has 3k DPM, it has fantastic mobility, and a gun that absolutely slaps. And if I'm not mistaken, it might even feature Spall Liner. I could be wrong on that, but I think it does. But it doesn't need it, because it actually has pretty good resistance in general. I really like the Shrek. I think it's a fantastic Tier 8, and I have no complaints at all about the vehicle. I actually do really well in it, so yeah, it's just a tank destroyer that you play kind of like a grill, but the advantage is you have a fully traversing turret, which means you don't need to worry about, turning to your side. And it also has a lot of camo, which means you can sit still, especially with the camo net buffs to tank destroyers, and not really worry about being spotted at all. So yeah, the Shrek TVP, it's going in super strong. Really, really enjoyable. Skoda T27. Skoda T27 is a tricky one for me, because it's got a stupid gun, a 1.5 second. You know what? I'm putting it in unfair. I don't care what you guys think. That's my opinion on it. And the reason why is because of the fact that it's got a 1.5 second intro clip. It deals 660 damage in 3 seconds. That is absolutely insane. And not only that, but it has fantastic penetration, 8 degrees gun depression. It's basically a Barask with the same dumping time, just about, second longer. But the advantage is that you have a much better pen and gun for holding, because you're a medium that's meant to hold, not a medium that's meant to flank and run around like a light. So I really like the Skoda T27. I think in a good player's hands, that vehicle is absolutely busted, and that's why I'm going to put it into the unfair category. It's just such a fun vehicle to mess around with, and yeah. The Skoda T56, super strong. I mean, no doubt in my mind. It features gear oil. It features a super high alpha damage of 450. It has 8 degrees of gun depression. It's got really good upper plate armor, troll side armor, and a turret that is very hard to cut through. And when you combine all these things together, it just makes an incredibly well-rounded heavy. The only downside of the Skoda T56 is the same thing that the 60 has, terrible accuracy. But with the refined gun changes, as long as you aim in, it's actually not too bad, so I don't mind it all too much. This is the Vipera, and even though I tested the Vipera, I'm not allowed to really share my opinion on it, so I'm going to drag that all the way down to the bottom, and we're going to keep on going here. So we have two different guns for the Semovente Contracar 64. We have the 105mm, which is the auto reloader, and we have the 120mm. The 120, easy, overpowered. The SMV Contracar 64 is a completely overpowered tank. I'm averaging easily over 3k in the vehicle. It has 11 degrees of gun depression. It has a turret which you physically cannot pen even in the majority of tier 9s loading gold, and it has 3,000 DPM. I mean, what else do you need? It's also fairly mobile. Reverses at 15-16 kilometers per hour, and it's got really good pen. It has no downsides. It really has no downsides. It is an absolutely incredible tank. When it comes to the 105mm, this one's going to go into super strong. It's still a good tank. I mean, the armor and everything is still incredible. It's just that the gun has a lot less DPM, about 1,000 less, and at that point you are definitely losing some capabilities. So while I don't love the accuracy of the 120, it's just an overpowered tank when you pair the 120 with the level of pen and DPM it features. The SMV is really just such a good point of proof why tech trees are just as strong as premiums once again. The Stritzvon 81, we'll put it into strong. It's got a great gun, solid gun depression, and a good turret. And because of that, it's a strong tank. I mean, when you combine good turret armor with a good gun and solid DPM and accuracy and pen, there's really no downsides there. I mean, any tank that has a good gun is always going to be a good tank. But what you have to remember is that it's also quite large, it's got a really weak hull, and its mobility isn't the best when you compare it to light tanks or faster mediums, so it's a strong tank. I don't think I would put it in super strong. I'd much rather play any of the vehicles in super strong over the Stritzvon 81. But I would definitely say it's comparable to a Lance & C or a 59 Patton in that kind of category. The TNH 105 is actually a pretty good vehicle. I'm not going to say there's anything amazing about it. Its alpha damage is kind of low. And while its armor is actually very good, I was surprised how strong the armor is on the tier 8. It's got a big hatch, it's got a big lower plate, and it doesn't have a lot of alpha. So, it's alright. I'm not going to say I hate the tank. I'm not going to say I loved playing it. It's a good vehicle. If you know what you're doing properly in it, you'll do fine. It's not like the TNH VZ51, where it's got rather mediocre armor for the tier that it sits at. So, I got no complaints about the tank. It's actually a pretty fun vehicle. The Tornvon, yeah, that's a no-brainer. It's gone right into unfair. The Tornvon features, first of all, an accurate gun. People don't realize that, but the Tornvon actually features like 0.326 dispersion or something like that. It's way too accurate for a 400 alpha, especially when you pair that with the fact that it has decent DPM, 10 degrees of gun depression, and very good penetration. It also features a turret which you literally cannot pen, and a hull which is rather strong. The World of Tanks PC Tornvon is balanced by its poor mobility, but the Blitz one, that isn't actually a problem for it. It's actually rather fast, which is completely surprising to me. So I have no complaints about the Tornvon. The fact that it has so much turret armor, paired with the gun depression, paired with the level of accuracy it has, I mean, it's got no downsides, really, and because of that, it just completely outclasses any of these Soviet-style heavy tanks. It's basically, what if I took an SMV and turned it into a tank, or a heavy tank, and that's what you got, the Tornvon. So it's a pretty easy, unfair vehicle. The TVP VTU is one of the highest pen tanks in tier 8, especially for a medium, which is crazy. It's got high alpha damage and actually rather troll armor. I'm going to put it into the strong category. I don't think that the majority of players liked it nearly as much as I did, so I'm not going to put it too high, but I think it's a rather capable tank. I think its gun is really nice, and I have no problems with it. The only issue is that it only has like 6 degrees of gun depression, which makes it rather lackluster to drive on any ridgeline, especially when other vehicles, especially higher tiers, might get hauled down and absolutely stop you. So that's what I think about the TVP VTU. AMX 1390. That's a tricky one. That's a tricky one. I'm going to put it in super strong. It features shell reload boost. It features 225 damage per shot. Really good premium pen. That's one of the things usually tier 9, or not tier 9, but tier 8 lights struggle with is premium pen. But this one, it has really good premium pen. Enough to cut through anything in front of it. And because of that, it's actually really, really enjoyable to play in. And I thoroughly love playing in the 1390. It's fun, it's fast, it's got a great gun, and it's got fantastic view range. So, yeah, I think it's a super strong tank. I think if anybody out there loves Bat Chat style gameplay, this is definitely one of those vehicles to mess around with. The AMX 5100, oof. I'm going to put it into the good category. It's got a nice gun. It's got a clipper. It's got decent DPM. It's also got mobility, a top speed of 45, 50-ish. It also has a really strong turret, actually. People don't realize, but the turret on the AMX 5100 is like 240 millimeters thick. The problem is the hull is absolutely worthless, and the vehicle features very poor gun depression. If the AMX 5100 actually had decent gun depression, I think it would be a very fun vehicle to mess around with. But because it doesn't, it's kind of awkward to play, especially for how large it is. It's not a bad tank. It's definitely better than workable, but I don't think it's much better than good. I would much rather drive any of these tanks in strong over an AMX 5100. The AMX AC 48, oof. Ooh, this one's tricky. I think we're going to put it in super strong. I really do. The tank has tungsten now, which is crazy good. And not only does it have tungsten, but Wargaming finally buffed its armor to a point where frontally it's actually impossible to really penetrate unless you're hitting the lower plate or the hatches. Now, those are big weak spots, but still, the armor's really good. And when you pair that with the fact now it has gear oil as well, that tier 8 is insane. It's actually really, really fun to mess around with, and I can tell you for a fact that it's a super strong vehicle. It's also got some of the highest pen values for a tier 8 tank destroyer, which is crazy. So, yeah, AMX AC is one of the best tier 8s, in my opinion, when it comes to TDs. Usually tier 8 tank destroyers don't make it past, like, the strong category. And the major reason why is because heavies have so much HP at tier 8. They have 1900. I mean, that's a huge amount of HP. When your average tank, you know, if you look at tier 10, mediums have like 2,000 health, 1,900 health, and heavies usually have about 2,500. There's only certain heavies like the 100 and the mouse that go upwards of 27 and above. And because of that, it means that the average medium is only about 500 health less than the heavies. But if you go to tier 8, the mediums have about 1,500 down to 1,000 health, depending on what tier you're fighting. And because of that, it's a lot easier for tier 8s to deal with mediums and other classes of vehicles. But tank destroyers, they only have 1,000 health. That means you have literally half the health of a tier 8 heavy in your tank destroyer. So you got to be really careful in tier 8. So that's why I personally think that TDs usually struggle a bit to get out all that whopping damage. But I guess we'll see, because we have a tank destroyer right now, which in Deedler is the AMX CDA 105. And the 105, I'm going to put it into the good category. I don't think there's anything per se amazing about it. It's got troll armor. It's got a great acceleration curve. It's actually one of the fastest tank destroyers in the game. The problem is it only goes like 55, so it's not actually that quick. Actually, I think it only goes 50. It's just rather unfortunate that it has such a good power to weight, but it's limited. It's got a speed governor on it, essentially, and it only goes 50. The gun's all right, but I wish it had a little bit more DPM for what it is. It's an okay tank. I think that it's... Actually, no, I'm going to put it in the strong. I think if I were to compare it, I would say it's better than the majority of vehicles in good. I'd put it in strong. That's where I'm going to leave this CDA. It's a fun vehicle. I just don't think there's anything that really makes it outstanding to a point where I would want to drive it. The AMX CDC, we're going to put it into... Oh, this one's tricky. I think I might do workable. Yeah, I'm going to do workable. The CDC, it's got a great gun, and it's got really good mobility, but everything HEs it. I mean, the tank, even if you don't get HE'd, it has like 30, 40 millimeters of hull armor. I remember the last time I tried making a video on the vehicle, I was really struggling to get out wins. I was doing fine. I was doing like 24, 2,500, but the problem is you're so large and so easy to shoot that whenever you make a poke, everything pens you that's aiming at you. And it means that it doesn't matter how skilled you are, because you aren't in a tank that's really easily going to hide its armor. And while you have that mobility, I don't know, I just personally didn't really love the CDC that much, and I think that its on-move also makes it really unenjoyable. If the on-movement dispersion was good, it'd be great. You know, the Dracula, you can shoot people on the move and hit a lot of your shells, but the CDC, you can't do that. Your accuracy on move is really bad, so you have to sit still, you have to wait for it to aim in. It makes the gun really unenjoyable. So I'm going to put it workable. That's kind of how I see the tank. The AMX Defender, it's going to go into the good category. I really don't think there's anything amazing about the AMX Defender. Its gun is all right. You know, it's got a 4-shell autoloader with 160 damage per shot. It's got decent penetration, but compared to the AMX 1390, I just don't see a reason why you would ever play this tank. The 1390 features a better gun. It's got more alpha. It's got shell reload boost. I just like the 1390 better. The only advantage the AMX Defender has is penetration on the standard, and the fact that the vehicle is somewhat hard to HE, but I don't really notice that to be a problem with my 1390 anyway. The 13 series vehicles are quite small and hard to hit with high explosives, so it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to put it into good. I really don't think that it's that amazing of a tank at all. We have the AMX M449, which, I'm going to put it in the strong. I actually like the AMX M449. It's got 10 degrees of gun depression and a really strong hull. It's got about 240 millimeters of upper plate armor. And the turret is actually about 300 mils. The only weak spot on the turret is the hatch. If you're using the vehicle hull down, it's almost impossible to hit that hatch. But if you do, you're going to pen every time because it's only about 50, 60 millimeters thick. So it's got some good things. It's got some bad things. Overall, the gun's great. Very good penetration. Solid DPM. The mobility is good. Reaches a top speed of 40. And when you pair that with the armor and everything else, I think it's a strong vehicle. I actually really enjoy playing in the tank. And last time I played in it, I had a rather fun experience. So I got no problems with the AMX M4. AMX Alt Proto, yeah, I don't know. It's all right. We're going to put it into the, what do we got? T-34-3, Type 59. I'll put it into the strong category. The Alt Proto has all right turret armor. It's got a troll hull and 280 damage per shot, I think. I don't think it's over 300, but I think it's 280. The tank overall, it's fun to mess around with, but I can't really say there's anything amazing about it. I do okay in it, you know. I really just don't think... The problem is, it's not even that fun to play. You know, I'd put it on the same effective capabilities of like a Lance and C, so I'm gonna put it in strong, but I personally don't think you should ever want to pick it up. There's really nothing amazing about it. It's got decent gun depression, it's got an okay alpha, and good mobility. When you pair those things together, it does create at least a decent experience for the driver. The Balshation Barask, yeah, it's always going to make it into the overpowered category. It's an OP tank. It's the highest win rate tier 8 in the game right now. That's a fact. It's doing better than the Chimera. It's doing better than every other medium. It is an absolutely incredible tank. And why? Well, because it's a light tank with a Borsig gun. It deals 640 damage, and it only takes 2 seconds to get all that damage out. And then you simply back in the cover, you reload, and you do it again, and again, and again. I have over 3,000 average damage in my Barask, and I have over an 80% win rate. I think I'm like 86%, and it's because of the mobility paired with the view range. The hit points are also really good. It's got like 1,500 HP. It's one of the healthiest tier 8 mediums. So it's just an incredible tank. I can tell you for a fact that if you are a player that likes light tanks and you have a decent understanding of mobility, the Balshation Barask is the way to go. It does require a bit of skill. I'll tell you that right now. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to do bad in a Barask. But if you know what you're doing, it's an incredible tank. So it's going to go into the unfair category because it is. Almost all double shot tanks in my eyes are unfair. Unless Wargaming does a good job balancing them. Like the Rhino, they actually did a great job balancing. But even then, I'm doing upwards of like almost 4K in it. So it shows just how strong double shot vehicles are. The FCM 50-ton, I'll put it in workable. It really isn't anything good. Its armor is bad. Its turret is bad. The gun is good. I'll give it that. The gun is great on the FCM. If the gun on the FCM was put on like a Type 59 or something, it would be an amazing tank. But it's on a vehicle that's the size of literally like it's just awful. You know, the gun is great, but everything else is awful. And its mobility is good too, but you're the size of a freaking 50B and you have only 225 damage per shot. Personally, I would love if they made it have a lot of frontal armor, like 200 plus on the hull and maybe 220 on the turret. I think that would actually allow the vehicle to kind of feel like an E50M at tier 8, and it'd be really fun to mess around with. But I just don't see any reason why you would ever drive an FCM 50-ton. It weighs 50 tons, yet it's got the same armor as a frickin' shoe. It's pretty sad. The Lorraine 40-ton and Lorraine Fearless are very similar. The Lorraine Fearless has a slightly better intraclip, but I'm going to rank them as the same. And we are going to be putting both of those vehicles into the We'll put them in the strong category. I like both variants. I think they're fun, and they are strong. They deal 900 damage, which makes it a very, very dangerous medium. It's got fantastic mobility and really good penetration. And when you add all those things together, it allows you to actually be a rather capable tank. Any clipper with mobility is going to be strong. I mean, that's just a fact, because you're able to move and maneuver behind your opponents, catch them off guard, and deal a lot of damage. Actually, it does 1,000 damage, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's 225 alpha, so it actually does 1,000 damage in this clip. That's a lot. I mean, that's literally a full health tier 7. So I really like the Lorraine. I think it's actually a rather fun vehicle, but it requires an immense amount of skill to play properly. Even in tier 8, it's a very, very hard vehicle to know what you're doing in, and because of that, it can be scary to play. So yeah, we're going to put it in strong. It is a good tank, but you definitely need to know what you're doing. The M4A1 Rev, I'm going to put in super strong. I think the vehicle is very underrated. It's got 350 damage per shot, which basically means it's got the alpha of a tier 10 medium. And what's great is that it also has really good pen, fantastic accuracy, and it's got one of the higher DPM values, like 2,500 DPM. In all regards, the Rev gun is amazing. Its turret is also decently trolled to the point where you will get bounces from tier 7s and tier 8s. And pair all that together with the fact it's a pretty mobile vehicle with 10 degrees of gun depression, and I think the Rev is a very, very underrated tier 8 medium. I don't think there's anything amazing about it, but well, actually, there is something amazing. The gun. But, like, armor-wise, there's nothing great. Actually, it's pretty bad. It's a hull. It's an M4 Sherman hull that has been slightly buffed on its armor. That's it. But because the gun is so good, it still makes it into the super strong category. I love playing in the Rev. I don't play it much because there are 146 tier 8s, but I can tell you that I really enjoy playing in the vehicle, and every time I use it is a blast. Salma SM, we're going to put that into super strong. The Salma is an auto-loading, basically Tiger 2. Its upper and lower plate are very strong. The upper plate's actually upwards of 260 to 70 millimeters thick if you angle it properly. The turret is actually the weak spot on the Salma, which is kind of goofy. You have the AMX 5120, or the AMX 5100, and what I'm pretty sure Wargaming said is, okay, well, if the Salma's got a really good hull but a bad turret, let's give the AMX a really bad hull and a good turret, and that's what they did. So the Salma, it's got great gun depression, and that's the big advantage over the AMX. It's got 10 degrees of gun depression. I'm pretty sure it's either 10 or 8, but I think it might be 10. So it's got great gun depression. It's got a top speed of 40, a really, really good upper plate, which can get you bounces. And when you pair that with the fact it's got a 3-shell auto-loading gun, which does 900 plus damage, it's a fun vehicle to play with. I got no problems with the Salma. I remember the first time I ever made a video on it, I had like 2 back-to-back 5Ks. It's a great tank, so I would definitely suggest if you like autoloaders and you want decent armor plus a bit of mobility, the Salma is a good shout to go for. Personally, I like the MIL 1951 more, but if you want a beefier vehicle which is better for brawling rather than holding, then go for the Salma. The E75 TS is really good, and I'm also going to line the Keeler up next to it because they're pretty similar and we can talk about them at the same time. The E75 TS is going to go into strong. It's got a good gun, really good gun, solid DPM, decent armor, and 10 degrees of gun depression. And those values are great. It allows the E75 TS to dish out damage. It allows it to get bounces due to the side scraping capabilities and the spaced armor mounted on the sides. And with the gun depression, you can actually get hull down and get decent shells out. Problem with the E75 TS is with the latest update and the way the heat shells just got rebalanced, the vehicle's turret armor is quite a bit less effective. And it wasn't great armor to begin with. It was only about 250 to 60 when fully hull down. So yeah, the armor on the E75 TS, it's mid. That's what I'll say. So because of that, I'm going to leave it in strong. I think the gun's nice, but I also think that a Tiger 2 is just better, and I think you should just drive a Tiger 2 over it. The Keeler, on the other hand, now that is a super strong vehicle. The Keeler takes the problems with the E75 TS and just erases them. It has a turret that's rounded, and while it may not have 10 degrees of gun depression, it still has like 8, which means you're still more than flexible on any ridgeline you play. And with the 350 Alpha, you can actually trade pretty evenly with other 400 to 300 Alpha tanks. The vehicle has really good armor, and it's actually slightly faster than the E75 TS as well. Really, the Keeler just is better in every way, apart from, I guess, DPM, but I mean, I don't really care that much about DPM if I can have a much more enjoyable experience and deal more damage per shot. So because of that, we're going to stick with the Keeler in terms of capabilities, where the E75 TS is going to stay a little bit further back. It's still a great tank, and it's a fun vehicle, but I just think the Keeler is better. The Elephant, we're going to put it in the good. The Elephant gun is incredible. 3,500 DPM. I mean, good luck fighting that. It's got great pen. It's got actually really, really good side armor. And not only that, but decently troll frontal armor. But the problem with the Elephant is that its superstructure is awful. It's only about 200 millimeters thick. And with the changes to armor that just happened and pen, the Elephant just became a little bit worse on armor as well. I was honestly tempted to put it into workable, but it's a good tank. I mean, the DPM is great, and if you know how to use it properly, you can get out some really, really dangerous results. It's just a little unfortunate that the vehicle's armor still is a bit lackluster. Take the armor off the side, put it on the front. That's what I'd like. The Ferdinand, we'll put it in the workable. The Ferdinand really isn't anything great, but it's nothing bad either. It's just the most mediocre tank in Tier 8. I really wish, again, they would just buff the armor of the Ferdinand and Elephant. Why do you have these super heavily armored TDs that have no armor? Give the superstructure like 250 mils thick. Make it like a Jagdtiger 88, and it would actually be a really, really good vehicle. But as of now, the Ferdinand isn't workable, and the Elephant isn't good. I like the Alpha more on the Ferdinand, but I like the DPM more on the Elephant, and I like the mobility more. So because of that, we're going to stick with the Elephant and the Ferdinand the way they are. The Hawk 30, I'm going to put it into strong. I actually think people really underrated the Hawk. A lot of people kept trying to say, oh, well, the RU-251's, it's a better Hawk because it has more DPM. Why would you ever get the Hawk when the RU exists? And that's just wrong. The Hawk has a lot of advantages. First of all, the Hawk has 10 degrees of gun depression over the front and the sides. The RU-251 does not have 10 degrees over the front. It only has it over the sides, which means the RU alone is already much less flexible. When you pair that together with the Hawk's much superior accuracy, personally, I think the Hawk is way better than the RU-251. I actually think it's a great tank. It's very fun to play. Its mobility is solid. It's got high explosives plastics, which is great as well. So overall, the Hawk 30 is a very, very enjoyable Tier 8 to play in. It's a very fun tank in general. I think people really underrated the tank, and they gave it a lot more hate than it deserved. It's definitely better than the RU-251. That's without even a doubt in my mind. And speaking of the RU, how about we break into that vehicle next? I'm going to be putting the RU into the good category. The RU is a good tank. It's got great DPM, really good mobility, but at the end of the day, it has the problem of no armor, and also, as I mentioned, very poor gun depression over the front, and those two things can make the tank rather weird to play. The gun depression alone, if you're not a veteran RU player, is going to be really awkward to play with. And when you pair that with the fact that literally every single player and their mother is going to be shooting HE at you, yeah, you got to keep that in mind. I wish the RU would get Spall Liner. If it did, it would actually be great. But as of now, it doesn't have Spall. It's a good tank. I mean, I do very well in it. It's just, I just don't think it's strong in the current meta. That's kind of how I see the vehicle. The Indian Panzer. Now, this tank, oh yeah, it's going right into the super strong category. The Indian Panzer is the highest DPM Tier 8 medium in the game. It's got 2,900, 800-ish DPM. It's got 8 degrees of gun depression, a really solid turret, and fairly good mobility. It's also got 240 alpha instead of 225. That's actually why its DPM is so good. It used to have 225 alpha. Wargaming buffed it to 240, which now allows the vehicle to be much more capable in the majority of ridge lines and out-trading your opponents. It's just a great tank in general, and I absolutely love playing in it. I think it is super, super duper underrated. The Jagdtiger 88, well, obviously the Jagdtiger 88 and Snowstorm are the exact same tank. They have the same gun, same armor, same everything. So we're going to be putting these vehicles in the same spot. And that spot is going to be super strong, honestly. The gun on the Jagdtiger is incredible. The 10.5 centimeter has 3,500 DPM. It has really good penetration. It has great accuracy. And when you pair that with the fact that the tank has 8 degrees of gun depression, and it has really good mobility for what it is, it's actually a really good tank. I mean, this is the problem with the Elephant. Like, the Elephant wishes it had the capabilities of the Jagdtiger 88. The Elephant's strong, but there's just no reason to drive the Elephant when you can have an 88. That's how I see it. So that's why the Elephant's down in good, and the Jagdtiger's all the way up in super strong. The Jagdpanther 2, we're going to put this in workable. It's got a really, really... Actually, you know, we'll do good. It's got a really good gun. I mean, it's got tungsten, and it's got really good DPM. It's got high alpha of 460. It's got a superstructure that's great, and a lot of mobility. But it also has really bad reverse, like 10 or 12 reverse is freaking awful. And not only that, but it's huge. Its armor's really bad on the hull, very easy to catch on fire. And those are big weaknesses. So While I really like the Jagdpanther too, and I love the gun the vehicle features, at the same time, I really don't like the size of the vehicle. I don't like its bad gun depression. It's very unflexible to use, especially late game. So it's one of those tanks that I like, but I also don't like at the same time. So it's going to go into the good category. The Kanonen Jagdpanzer 105 is going to go into the same spot as the CDA. The 105 has more DPM and better accuracy than the CDA. The only disadvantage is that it has worse armor. The Kanonen has basically no armor, where the CDA actually has some armor. Personally, I like the Kanonen more because the gun is much better. It's quite a bit faster on top speed. I think it goes like 60 or 65 instead of 50. And when you pair all that together again with the fact that it's just a flat better gun, I personally like the Kanonen better. It's basically the CDA has a AMX 30B gun, and the Kanonen has a Leopard 1 gun. And that's your question. Would you rather have a tank destroyer with a Leopard gun or a tank destroyer with a 30B gun? And I choose the Leopard every day of the week. So that's kind of how I see the Kanonen. It's a little bit worse on flexibility, but a lot better in the gun department. The Kampfpanzer 07, that one's going in super strong. I absolutely love the Kampfpanzer 07. It's got 240 alpha, which is great. Solid DPM, really good mobility, and the accuracy is insane. 0.29 dispersion is incredible. It makes the tank so fun to play and mess around with. In general, it is just an amazing tank, and I really enjoy playing in it. So I have no complaints about the Kampfpanzer 07. I really enjoy playing in the vehicle, and yeah, I mean, it's just a great tank. Every time I play it, I really enjoy it. So if you want just an overall really fun medium that is fun to play, has a good alpha, decent mobility, great accuracy, it's a Leopard 1 in Tier 8, but it doesn't have bad accuracy. Not accuracy, bad armor. That's what's great about it. So, I mean, its armor's not good. It's like 180 on the turret, or maybe 200, but it's enough that you're not going to be penned by high explosive. It's enough that you will get bounces from Tier 7s. So it's actually quite nice in that regard. The Kampfpanzer Project 68 Proto also is going to make it into the, well, I'm going to do the strong category. I don't think it's super strong. I think I'd rather play a 122 TM, but the Kampfpanzer Project 68 has a really good turret. It's not able to be penned really hull down. And when you pair that with the 380 damage per shot and the high levels of heat pen it features, it's a very good tank. I mean, I've really enjoyed the gun depression paired with turret armor. The problem is it has no hull armor, like none. So if anybody gets your hull exposed, you're getting penned every day of the week. But again, you have high alpha, you have really good turret armor. Even though it's literally designed off of a Leopard turret, it is kind of funny how it has such a strong turret. So I really like the Kampfpanzer Project 68. I think it's a really good vehicle. That's why it's going into the strong category. The Lechpanzer M4190, otherwise known as the Black Dog. This vehicle, we are going to put it in... I'm actually going to do strong. I really like the tank. It's got a very accurate 240 alpha gun. It's got great mobility, solid gun depression, because obviously it's a German, but it's an American-style German vehicle, which is weird, but it's a Bulldog. That's what it is. And I love the high explosive on this tank. It has 320 damage high explosive with over 100 millimeters of pen. It's like 110 mils. It's enough to cut through the side of a Tiger II, the side of a Luva, basically any tank you can cut through the sides of or the rear. And when you pair that with the fact you already have really good DPM, this thing has over 3k DPM unloading the HE, and it rips it out like a beast. And when you pair that with the fact it's a light tank and it's got a great gun in general, really good pen, decent accuracy, I really like the M4190. It is such a fun vehicle to mess around with. Personally, I don't understand why people do so bad in the tank. I think it's just because they don't know how to play it properly, but I can tell you personally, I love the vehicle, and I'm never going to diss on it because I really do. I do really enjoy playing in it. The Luva, we'll put it into the... we'll do the good category, or the strong category. I kind of put it on the same result as the E75 TS. You know, the DPM of the Luva, it's mid, but it's got some of the highest pen values in Tier 8. It's got really good accuracy, 0.29. And those two things alone are great, but it's not very fast. Its armor is kind of mediocre on the hull. So because of that, you're very easy to pen. You're very easy to catch out in the open. I don't ever have a hard time fighting the Luva, but I do have a very enjoyable time when driving it because of that level of accuracy and DPM it has. It's just a great gun. German vehicles are always known for their accuracy, and obviously the Luva really exemplifies that because the gun on the vehicle is great. Everything about the tank is really, really nice. So I really enjoy playing in the tank. It's rather strong. I would say we're actually about halfway through the list. Maybe not. I don't know. We've made it a decent chunk through. So we got the Rahmenpanzer. And the Rahmenpanzer is going to go into the... It's either strong or super strong. We put the 59 patent in strong. I'm going to put the ROM Panzer in super strong. It's basically a better 59 patent. It has the same turret, the same hatch, everything. If you look at the pictures here, you can see they're almost identical. The difference is the ROM Panzer has a much better hull. It's got a plow on the front, and because of that, it means that people don't know where to shoot you, and especially unskilled players panic when they see a ROM Panzer. Pair that with the fact the ROM Panzer also has great ramming potential, solid DPM, and some of the best accuracy in Tier 8 for a medium, and it's actually a really, really fun vehicle to mess around with. I love the ROM Panzer. I think it's a great tank. I love the Rhino camo it has as well. In general, it's just a really, really fun vehicle to mess around with, and I do very well in it, so that's why it's going in super strong. The Panther 88 is a rather interesting Tier 8 German medium. The vehicle, in the latest update, features tungsten and a bunch of other consumables now, which have definitely buffed the vehicle. And it was already an okay Tier 8, so I'm actually going to put it in the strong category. The fact that it has tungsten, the fact that it has all these special abilities going for it, actually allows the tank, in my opinion, to be rather strong. And I'm probably going to have a video up on the vehicle later this week as it is. So, yeah, I have no complaints with the Panther 88. I think Wargaming did a decent job buffing it. I wish instead of giving vehicles consumables, they just buffed the tanks themselves. But, oh well. I mean, what are you going to do about it? You just got to suck it up, play with the consumables, and call it a day. The Panther 2, we are also going to be putting in the strong category. The Panther 2 doesn't need consumables to be good, because it's just a good tank in general. It's basically a Tier 8 E50M. The gun is incredibly accurate. Same for the Panther 88. Both the Panther 2 and 88 feature, I would say, one of the best gun values in the game for accuracy. Like, you don't realize what accuracy is until you play those two vehicles. And when you pair that with the fact that the Panther 2 has really solid upper plate armor, a decent turret, great mobility, it literally is a Tier 8 E50M. Plus, well, you know, rammer rig on, what is it, Mad Games or Uprising? I think it's Mad Games. Either way, whatever the ability is, you get rammer rig, which allows you to literally just YOLO people and blow them up in half a second. And that's just another reason why the Panther 2 is so strong. So, yeah, the Panther 2 and Panther 88, I think, are both really good. The 88 sacrifices a bit of armor for a much better gun, and it also gets tungsten now, which is great. So, I can't complain there. The Panzer 58, the Moots, it's kind of just a worse Indian Panzer at this point. I mean, I'll put it in strong, I guess. It's not a bad tank at all, actually. Like, it's still a rather flexible vehicle. Its gun depression allows it to be pretty good. Also, we're going to put the Schwarz Panzer all the way down here, because it's in testing still. But the Moots, it's alright. I mean, it's kind of like a Panther 2 if you took away the hull armor and gave it turret armor and more gun depression. And because it's a flexible tank, it's got good DPM, great accuracy. I actually rather enjoyed playing it when I remember it getting released, and I don't think it's really changed much since then. I've used it every now and then. It's just kind of like a slightly worse Indian Panzer, so that's kind of how I see it. So we'll put it in strong. I don't think it's a vehicle you should go out of your way to purchase, but if you did get it from a crate or something for free, it'll be a decent way to earn credits, and it's not a bad tank at all. We have the Borsig with the 12.8 centimeter and the 15 centimeter. With the 12.8, I'm going to put it into workable. I really don't see a reason why you should ever... Oh, didn't mean to do that. I don't ever see a reason why you should use the Borsig with the 12.8. It has literally no DPM. It's got like 2k DPM, which makes no sense. Wargaming seriously needs to buff the DPM on the 12.8. So it's a little unfortunate in that regard, but that's why the 15 centimeter exists. It used to have 367 milliliters of heat pen, but with the Cali changes, it's now upwards of 380 almost, which is kind of crazy. And not only does it have really, really good heat pen, but it's got a high alpha of 580. The vehicle is not very accurate, but at least the refined gun changes helps it a little bit. Features small liner. I'm still going to put the Borsig into strong. It's a really annoying vehicle to fight, and if you know what you're doing in it, you can cause a lot of trouble to the enemy. So I'm going to put it in the strong. I think it is a strong vehicle. I think it's a rather menacing tank to go up against, so that's where we're going to put it. Scorpion G. Scorpion G we're going to put in strong as well. I don't think it's a super strong tank. Like, the Scorpion, don't get me wrong, it's great. It's got 460 alpha, and I do very well in it. The problem is, it's a lightly armored tank destroyer, and it doesn't really matter how much alpha damage you have. Well, obviously, if it had a 183 gun, it would be in super strong, but it doesn't. It's got 460, and it's got really good accuracy and really good DPM and decent mobility, but it has no spall liner and no armor. And because of that, I personally would much rather play a Shrek TVP than a Scorpion, because the Shrek has the armor that you don't need to worry about being penned with high explosive width, and it makes that tank just a little bit more enjoyable. If Wargaming simply gave the Scorpion Spall, it would go into super strong, but I can't tell you how many times I played the Scorpion and some T49 player YOLOs out of nowhere, HEs you, and then runs away. And it's one of the most irritating things in the game. And because the T49 is one of the most played tier 8s in the game, it's quite common to deal with vehicles like that, especially late game. Scorpion's great, but it's definitely fallen out of favor, I would say, in terms of capabilities over the years. Still a great tank, though. What else do we got? We got a Tiger 2. This one's a no-brainer, easy, super strong. Tiger 2 has great DPM. It's got decent mobility, and it's got armor that you literally can't pen. Its upper plate is about 270. Its lower plate's about 250. And the turret is actually the weak spot at about 240. It's just great in general. The hatch no longer exists because Wargaming changed the way the turret armor works when they enhanced its graphics. And it's got really good pen. Its accuracy isn't amazing, but everything else is. Even the DPM is surprisingly good. The Tiger 2 is one of the best free-to-play vehicles in the game. It's such an easy tank to play, even as a beginner. All you need to do is not over-angle the sides, and you'll be fine. So, yeah, the Tiger 2, it's going in the super strong. That's not even a doubt in my mind. The VK100 is also going to be making its way into super strong. It features a 460 alpha gun. It's got really good armor and pretty good traverse speed and reverse speed. That's the thing that I've always find goofy about the VK. It's got, like, the mobility. Like, sure, it only goes 20. But if you actually look at the traverse and the reverse speed, it's more like a mobile heavy. It reverses at 15, which is great, and it turns at like 40 degrees a second, which is crazy. Imagine a mouse turning that fast. When you pair that with the fact that this thing's got a really dangerous gun for the tier it sits at, I love the VK100. I think it's way better than the mouse. As I've said in previous videos, the VK100 is everything the mouse wishes it could be, because the VK's armor actually works very well in tier 8, where it doesn't work in tier 10 as the mouse. The alpha damage on the VK feels amazing in tier 8, because it's 460. It's the same as the mouse. So the VK is kind of just a perfect example of what a good super heavy looks like, and that's why it's in super strong. The VK168, on the other hand, and that vehicle is going to go into workable. The 168 features the same alpha, but with a hull armor profile that is 10 times worse. Its lower plate is worse, its upper plate is worse, its side armor is worse. It's heavier, and if you're going to play in a game mode like Gravity, sure, it's amazing. But we're not talking about Gravity here, we're talking about pubs. And in that case, the VK168 is really not that good of a vehicle. The tech tree is flat better. That's about as simple as it gets. The VK4502A is... this is a tricky one. It's either going in the strong or super strong. I'm going to put it in... You know what? I'm putting it in super strong. I think people really underrate the tank, to be honest. Its turret is much stronger than that of the Tiger 2. And you can actually look at the in-game stats and see that. It's about 20 more millimeters of effective armor on the Tiger 2. And personally, the only thing I don't love about the Tiger 2 is that its turret is weaker. The VK45 features a really strong upper plate, about 270 thick, especially if you're using enhanced and using it hull down. Its armor is great. And because the turret is much stronger, it means that when you're using gun depression, the VK45 is nearly impossible to deal with. Pair that with the fact the vehicle also has great mobility. It's got like medium levels of mobility with also tungsten and decent DPM. I really like the VK45. If you watch any of my previous videos on the vehicle, I thoroughly enjoyed playing in it, and I've talked about why it's such a fun tank, why it's so good. So yeah, the VK45, we're going to be putting that in the super strong category. The Death Star, the newest tier 8 released into the game. Well, first things first, we are going to have to zoom out here a little bit because we are running out of room on our tier list to drag vehicles up. This is the only problem we're having here. I wish I could drag this out a bit to the sides, because if I could, it'd be a lot easier. But the Death Star, it's going into the unfair category. The Death Star is an absolutely insane tank. It has a Hesh firing gun, which deals 370 damage per shot. That's 1110 because it has a 3-shell clip with a 2.2 second incher clip. So that means in 4.4 seconds, you can deal 1110 damage. A TVP in tier 10 does 1200 in 6.5 seconds. So you are basically dealing the same damage as a TVP 2 seconds faster, which is insane. Especially when you realize the Death Star has a top speed of almost 50. Its surprisingly good on traverse speed, and it's also got pretty good camo values. Oh, I should also mention 2,600 DPM and 0.3 dispersion. The vehicle is accurate, it's got DPM. It is literally one of the most overpowered tanks Wargaming has released into the game in a while, and it's a really fun tank because of that. The other good thing is that it doesn't feature any armor, so people that don't know how to play the game are going to do really bad in it, but people that do know how to play the game are going to do really good in it. So yeah, Death Star, it's going into the unfair category. The Fixer, it's kind of a goofy vehicle. It's basically a Super Pershing with higher alpha, and because of that, I'll put it in strong. I mean, it is a strong tank. I like the gun on it, and I like the mobility. The only thing I don't love about the Fixer is that it's kind of derpy, which can cause you to miss shots, and its lower plate is quite a bit weaker than the Super Pershings. But in terms of the armor on the upper plate and the turret, it's pretty good, and the alpha damage is very nice, and the alpha is definitely the one thing I feel like the Super Pershing is missing. So the Fixer is actually a rather capable vehicle. It's very fun to mess around with, and because of that, I'm going to leave it in the strong category. I actually like the vehicle quite a bit. It's a very fun tank. The ground tank. This is a tricky one. The ground tank is actually a really, really tricky one. And I know that this is going to cause some people to tweak, but I'm going to put it into super strong. And I'm not joking. If we make our way in the Blitz, I forgot to minimize the game, so we got to wait for it to load. But if we make our way into World of Tanks Blitz, and we head over to the ground tank, you are going to see why I have chosen the opinion of this vehicle being in super strong. And that is because, out of 32 games, I'm averaging almost 3,000 damage in the vehicle with a 75%. Win rate could be a bit higher, but the fact that I'm going that high in the vehicle is crazy. And then you make your way over to Blitz analysis, and you see it's the highest win rate tier 8 in the game. And you're thinking, how is that possible? Well, it's because it's basically a mouse in tier 8. The vehicle's huge, it's got ridiculously troll side armor, and it's got a high alpha gun. And when you pair those things together, plus the 10 degrees gun depression, it's actually a rather good vehicle. I just sucked in I don't know what the heck I sucked in, but I almost just died there. Either way, the ground tank, it looks really bad. Like, you'd think, holy crap, this tank sucks. And even when you drive it, you feel like it sucks. But then somehow, every time I play this vehicle, I end up getting like a 3k carry. Every time. It's so goofy. But I'm putting it in super strong. As much as I want to diss on the tank, it really does well, which is absolutely weird. Now, we talked about the TVP V2 already, and we put it in strong. And then we have the Nebulon, which is the kind of better TVP V2. See, the Nebulon has a slightly less alpha gun with similar armor. The difference is the Nebulon has 10 degrees of gun depression, and that alone puts it in super strong. The TVP, if it had 10 degrees, it would be amazing, but it doesn't. It has 6, and that makes it very awkward to work on ridge lines. But the Nebulon, featuring 10, allows it to work any spot. And when you pair that with the high alpha and the great levels of pennant features, it is honestly a super strong vehicle. I enjoy playing the tank. I think it's a really fun vehicle to mess around with, and that's why it's going there. We have the O47, and the O47 is kind of a goofy one. It got buffed on the DPM not too long ago, and its armor is actually pretty troll to the point where a lot of people bounce it, but it's also not that great of a vehicle, and I'm going to put it into the good category. It's outdated. That's as much as there is to say. I really think Wargaming should just give it like a little bit more DPM even so, and then it would be really, really good. But right now, it's just missing a little something, but it's still a decent vehicle. You can do well in it. It's not that great of a tank. That's the best way to word it. The Swindler, I actually really enjoy. And we put the AMX 1390 in super strong, and I'm going to put the Swindler in super strong. As I said, I really enjoy the tank. It's got an auto-reloading gun with 240 alpha. Let me double-check that, because I don't want to be wrong on my stats there. So we go over to Tier 8. Well, we're actually already on Blitz Nation. It's just a Blitz Nation Light. It has... Oh, wait, I didn't mean to click this. Pretty sure it has 240 alpha. Let's see. Yes, indeedler, it does. 240 alpha. It's also got really good pen, 286 on the premium, really good standard pen, and it's got decent DPM at 2,100. I just really like auto-reloaders in general, and the thing that I really like about the Swindler is that you have the ability to shoot 2 shells into somebody very quickly for 480 damage, back in the cover, reload, and do it all again. And what's really nice is that you also have a full clip, so what you can do is you can shoot once, reload, shoot once, reload, shoot twice, reload, reload. And then if somebody tries rushing you, you just go bam, 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 dump the full clip, and you can either leave or you can kill them with that. And that's what I really like. It's just like the Caro, where you can use that reserve shell to kill somebody after you've lowered them to the guaranteed kill level, you know? So if you lower somebody to 580 health in your Swindler, you can then just dump your clip and you'll always win. And that's what I really like about the vehicle. So it's a really fun tank in that regard. Auto reloaders are better than auto loaders in most situations because auto loaders have to sit with a big downtime to get their shells back, where auto reloaders, if played properly, don't. They just shoot, reload, and then they dump the clip when they need to. And it's a great level of flexibility. We have the Titan 54D, which it's a tier, it's a medium, even though you think it's a light tank because it looks exactly like the T-54 lightweight. It's a medium, and it's actually a really good medium. The gun's great. The armor's solid. I'd put it at the same level of the Fixer. It's kind of in that category of, it's a niche tank, but it's kind of cool. It's got a decent mechanic where you activate it, it moves the armor up like this, and then it also gives you like 10% damage resistance, but let's be honest, with how reactive just got buffed to almost 30%, reactive completely just, you know, beats it, and this pales in comparison. But still, the Titan 54D has a really good gun on move. It's actually got one of the best on move accuracy values in the game. So if you pair that with refined gun, it's actually really enjoyable there, and its armor is pretty good in general. It's just that it's not super flexible, so it is a little bit tricky in that type of situation. But overall, I think it's actually a really fun vehicle, and I'm going to leave it in strong. We're going to finish off the Blitz Nation vehicles with the Titan Charioteer, which is kind of a goofy vehicle. I'm going to put it into good. I really don't think it's that spectacular of a tank. Its armor is only 200 millimeters effective, and that's just not good. Tier 7s, sure, they might bounce you occasionally, but Tier 8s are not going to bounce you. And when you pair that with the fact that the gun is incredibly derpy, it's just a flat worse gun in almost every way compared to the Tech Tree Charioteer. And the fact that the vehicle's armor doesn't even give you any benefits because it's still not good enough to really get bounces. I don't know. If Wargaming gave the Titan Charioteer a lot more health, I think it was decent, but it doesn't. It's just a really mediocre tank, and it's better than workable. Like, you can do okay in it, but it's definitely not strong. I just, meh. I don't really like the tank that much. Alright, I had dinner, I'm back. We are cutting through this list, I would say pretty efficiently, but we still got quite a bit to go. We now have the Chisei. And I love the Chisei. I recorded a video on the vehicle just the other day talking about how the calibrated buffs to the vehicle have allowed it to be even better. So because of that, we are putting the Chisei in super strong. Its gun is great, solid DPM, really good frontal protection, and you have two different ways you can play it. Because it has improved suspension and improved V-stabs, you can either get 9 degrees of gun depression, which is what I recommend, or more mobility. Either way, the tank is going to be great. It's going to be flexible. It's just a really fun tank. And when you pair that with the almost 300 millimeters of premium AP pen it has, it's kind of crazy. So, yeah, that's going in the super strong. The Hori T1. Now, this tank is, it's kind of mid, I'll be honest. I never loved playing it, but I also never hated playing it. We're going to put it into the good category. Honestly, the good is kind of like average, but that's kind of how it is. There's just really nothing spectacular about the vehicle. I mean, it's got solid DPM, and it's got really, really good pen, but its armor and mobility are rather lackluster, and because of that, you don't really feel like you're out-trading your opponents all too much, and I don't know, it's just not that fun of a tank to drive. I think you can do all right in it, but I think you'll do just as good in any of the other tanks in the good category. Then we have the Type 5 Kari, which I'm going to put in strong. I don't think it deserves super strong. It's kind of just a slightly better Hori T1. It's got more alpha, 440 instead of 400. And its armor, while slightly worse, is angled, which means you can get better bounces. It also features a really nasty gun with same AP style premium and has reticle calibration. I like the Kari a little bit better. It's nice to play. It's a fun tank. I think Wargaming actually did a decent job balancing it. Any vehicle in the strong category is pretty well balanced, but able to hold their own in a way that's quite fun. I think Wargaming should really strive to have most of their vehicles in the strong to super strong style category. Anything below, like good, is not the most fun, but also not the worst either. In workable, you really shouldn't drive them unless you really, really want to. The STA-1 is, Well, that's an interesting one. I need to see how much DPM the STA has. I remember Wargaming buffed it. I want to see to how much, though. Because if it's not enough DPM, I'm still not going to say it's all that good. 2,300, I mean, that's alright. And it does have 311 mils of heat. I'm going to put the STA one in good. I don't think it's anything better. It doesn't feature much armor. Its DPM is still kind of mediocre, especially when you have vehicles like the 59 Patton and the Rompanzer, but it's okay. I did remember for a fact that Wargaming buffed that, and with its 311 mils of heat pen, that's kind of insane. So it does have some characteristics, but it has really bad armor. It's super easy to high explosive pen if you know where to aim, and because of that, it's a good tank. I can't say it's great, but it's good. The Type 57 is a Tier 8 heavy, and it's a really, really strong heavy. I would definitely put this tank in super strong. It features great gun depression, enough to work any ridgeline hull down. I think it's 8 degrees, which is honestly fantastic. The tank also features a really strong upper plate and a turret, which is nearly impossible to cut through unless you have either 300 millimeters of heat, which you can shoot through the cheeks of the turret, or you're able to hit the hatch. But in general, the Type 57 has really good hull-down armor. It's kind of like an Object 252 if you were to turn it into a hull-down heavy, which is great. It also has really high alpha damage at 430. It's just a fun tank. I actually really enjoyed playing it, and it's one of those vehicles I do very well in. It does have some downsides to the 252. The biggest is probably the side armor, but honestly, I would trade side armor any day for the gun depression the Type 57 has. It's also not a slow tank, so it's kind of just great in a lot of different regards. We've now made it to the British tree, and there's actually a lot of Tier 8 British tanks. Not nearly as many as American or Soviet, but there is still quite a bit. We start off with the Action 10. Let me slide the Carnarvon over here as well so we can do both at the same time. We'll start off with the Carnarvon, which is the tech tree heavy. And the Carnarvon's going to be making it up into the overpowered category. Why? Well, it features 3,000 DPM, which is crazy. It also actually has more armor than the Carnarvon Action 10. People don't realize that, but the turret armor, the hull is worse. I will say that right now. The hull of the Carnarvon is worse than the Action 10. But the turret, if you actually look at Armor Inspector and you take a look at the Carnarvon versus the Action 10, the Carnarvon's turret is better while hull down. Its roof is stronger, which is the major weak spot of the Action 10. That's a big benefit. And when you pair that with 3,000 DPM and very good accuracy and decent penetration, the Carnarvon is a super dangerous tank. People truly underestimate the vehicle's capabilities. I think it's incredibly fun to play with, and it's just such a scary tank to fight. So I'm going to put that into the broken category. The Action 10 is going to go super strong. The Action 10 is still a great tank. It's more accurate than the Carnarvon, and it does feature slightly less DPM at about 2,700 versus the 3,000 that the Carnarvon has. The big downside of the Action 10, as I said, is just that its turret armor is a bit weaker, but you have the advantage of having the hull of almost like a super conch. Like, your hull armor is really good on the Action 10. You can angle it properly, your tracks will eat the shots, and you won't have to worry about being penned. So you do have that big advantage. On flat ground, the Action 10 is amazing. And again, super strong category is great. If you look, oh, well, he put the Carnarvon in broken, that means the Action 10's not good. Wrong. The Action 10 is still a great tank. It's just as good as any of the other vehicles I've put here, but I just don't think it's as good as the tanks in the broken category. That's the best way to describe how I do the tier list. Is it's just, I think these tanks are better than these tanks here. I think these tanks are better than the tanks in good. It's just each category, I think, is better than the vehicles we've put below in terms of capabilities. We have the AT-15, which we have the 20-pounder and the 32-pounder. Now, the 20-pounder is the small alpha gun. If we make our way over to the AT, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. But the AT has a 225 alpha gun, which is the super stupid DPM 4K. And then we also have the 32-pounder, which has worse DPM. It's still a lot, 3,500, but its alpha damage goes up by 75. Personally, I would say the 32-pounder goes into the good category. It's a solid gun, it has high alpha, and it's similar to that of the Elephant, where you have certain capabilities. I'd actually say this tank is better than the Elephant, but it's still not mobile, it doesn't feature much flexibility, so it's going to go into the good category. However, the 20-pounder on the AT is kind of stupid, I'm not going to lie. And I'm going to put it, I'm honestly going to put it into the broken category. I think that this follows in the unfair category, where the gun on this vehicle is insane. Now, I'm not saying that everything about the AT-15 is broken. It's not. Like, the tank is slow. It doesn't feature that much armor, really. But nobody can sit here and deny that 3,855 DPM paired with adrenaline, so over 5k DPM, on a tier 8 tank destroyer isn't a little bit nutty. It is. I have played many games where you will literally just absolutely annihilate something in front of you, and they don't even have the opportunity to blink. They're just dead. And because of that, the 8's is a ridiculously fun vehicle. In terms of capabilities, I would put the tank more in strong, but I think because of the gun, I'm putting it in the unfair category. That's how I see it. The Carnarvon Defender, also, I'm trying to figure out which one of these. I think this, yes, this is the one with my cold soda. Gotta love a good old soda. All right, so as I was saying, we have the Carnarvon Defender. And the Carnarvon Defender is a vehicle I was very excited for when it got released, but then it got released and it was actually rather mediocre. I'm going to put it into the strong category. It's still an autoloader. It has decent side scraping capabilities, and it does do a solid amount of damage. It's got decent DPM. The thing I don't like about the Carnarvon Defender is that its turret is pretty bad, and it's also really, really ugly. Like, holy fugly. It's got to be one of the ugliest tier 8s in the game. I just hate the way the turret looks like somebody just sat on it. So, because of that, I'm not going to put the Carnarvon Defender in the super strong, because it's not. The Emil 1951, Sama are better. I always get the tanks up here. But it's not a bad tank. I just wish they would give it a stronger turret. If it had like a Carnarvon Action 10 turret, or even the Tech Tree Carnarvon turret, it would have been amazing. But as I said, they gave it a goofy turret. Because of that, it takes away a lot of its capabilities. The armor just isn't great. The Caliban, we're going to put it into workable. The Caliban has an amazing gun when it works. And it has one of the worst guns in the game when it doesn't. Like, the Caliban has the ability to deal 870 damage per shot or something like that when you pen an HE. But it also has the worst dispersion in tier 8, and the worst aiming time in tier 8, and the worst armor for a heavy in tier 8, and awful mobility. It only has gun depression and a high alpha. That's it. If you have a good game in the vehicle and you're able to nuke players, it's great. And I actually can do fairly well in the Caliban. But there's also games where it does really bad, and it's completely RNG dependent. So that's why it's in the workable category. You can do well in it, but it is very, very, very team dependent, very lineup dependent, and obviously RNG dependent. The Centurion Mark 5-1 is going to go into the super strong category. It's not a fun tank to play, but it is a very strong tank. It's got amazing turret armor. While hull down, there's almost no way to actually deal with the tank. But thankfully, it only has 190 damage per shot, so it's not that big of a deal. You know, peppers you a little bit, you just back up, you find a different spot to go. But in terms of its capabilities, it has decent DPM, fantastic accuracy, great penetration, good mobility, and solid armor. And because of that, it's just a great tank. I mean, what more would you want? Well, personally, I want a bit of excitement. I like the Action 10 a lot more than the 5-1, because the Action 10 has the DPM the 5-1 doesn't, and it's just a bit more of an aggressive style vehicle. But I still think the 5-1's a great tank. I just personally don't love it because it's kind of boring. The Centurion, we have two different options here. And I'm going to be honest, both of these guns are the exact same on typing. This says 20-pounder. They're both the exact same on typing. But the reason why there are two different gun variants for the Centurion is because that the vehicle features a HESH gun and a high DPM gun. And we can see that here. So we got the 20-pounder Type AF, which features 2,500 DPM. And then we also have the 20-pounder Type BM, which has 2,300 DPM, but it has high explosive, which does 250 damage per shot. We are going to be focusing on the HESH firing gun, and I'm going to just put the other gun down here. So we're only going to talk about the HESH gun, because that's the gun I would recommend to drive on the vehicle if you're going for the FE4202. With that in mind, I'm going to put the Centurion into... Ooh, this one's tricky. This one's really, really tricky. I'm going to do strong. I don't think it's as good as the vehicles up here, but it is a strong tank. The HESH capabilities of the vehicle are very nice. That 180 mils of pen paired with 250 damage per shot means you can rip out damage like crazy. You have effective 3k DPM when firing high explosive, which is great, but you don't have a lot of turret armor, and you also don't have any hull armor. It's kind of like a Stritzvon 81, but you've worse armor. And as we can see, I've put the Stritzvon into the same category as well. So I just feel like in terms of capabilities, the tanks are very similar. They're not bad by any means, but you're also going to struggle a little bit in some situations, especially if you're up against vehicles that require you to have good pen to cut through. So, yeah, it's a good tank, though. I really enjoy the Hesh gun. I think it's fun. Any vehicle that challenges my skills and makes me think outside of the box on how to deal with an opponent, I like. It's why I love the 4202. And it's why I'm really glad Wargaming gave the Centurion a Hesh firing option as well. We have the Charioteer, which I actually think the Charioteer goes into the strong category. It's got a great gun. It's got 440 damage per shot with a high explosive squash head. It's got very good penetration and solid DPM. And its APCR is also really good pen, like enough to cut through really the majority of tier 8 you're dealing with. Pair that with great mobility and spall liner, and the Charioteer is a fantastic vehicle. It really is a fun tank to play. It's a flexible tank. It's just a better version of the Titan Charioteer. I actually think the Charioteer is super underrated in its current state because of the capabilities it has going for it. So let me know what you guys think about the Charioteer. But even though it's been nerfed quite a bit, I remember when it was first in the game and it was completely overpowered, but even after the changes, it's still a very fun, capable vehicle. So I got no problems with it. The Charlemagne is an interesting one because it's got a really good gun, like really good gun. And it's got solid turret armor, but a really bad hull and very poor mobility for what it is. I'm going to put the Charlemagne in... I'm going to put it in strong. At the end of the day, when you're fighting tier 9s, the Charlemagne falls very short due to its lack of penetration. And its armor isn't great. It's good, but it's not great. It's my favorite tier 8 in the game right now, but that's not to say it doesn't have downsides. And those downsides definitely bring it down a peg or two. Strong is still a good category, and if you can do well in the Charlemagne, you can absolutely delete. I mean, I've had games of 5-6k in the vehicle easily, but I've also had games where I've dealt 1,000 damage because I can't pen anything hull down, and I'm firing Hesh, and none of them are penning, and that's what you have to keep in mind with the Charlemagne. It's really dangerous, but it also requires a situation where you're able to use that danger and you're able to penetrate your opponents, which is where the vehicle lacks a bit of its capabilities. But still, a very fun tank and a very good one when played properly. The Chieftain T95 is one of those vehicles that if the hatch didn't exist, it would be easily one of the best tier 8s in the game. But unfortunately, the hatch does exist, and because of that, it takes away a lot of its capabilities. It's crazy how much that hatch actually dictates the tank. The Chieftain has some of the best view range in tier 8, which is kind of crazy because it is on a heavy. It even outspots some mediums, which is kind of funny. I'm going to put it in strong. It's still got a really good gun. It's got solid DPM, and it's got pretty good armor on the upper plate and on the turret as long as you don't get hit in the hatch. When you pair that with 10 degrees of gun depression, it's actually a really fun tank. As I said, the problem is that it just doesn't have enough armor on the hatch. I wish that it didn't exist, or at least it was smaller, because you would survive a lot longer. But in general, the Chieftain still features a really good gun, and a good gun can go a long ways, especially when you pair it with good mobility, solid hull armor, and a really, really good chunk of just armor in general on the turret. So I like the Chieftain. I just wish it was a little bit better, and it would easily make it in the super strong. The Chimera, yeah, I mean, this is an easy one. I don't think it's overpowered, but I am going to put the Chimera in super strong. When the Chimera was first introduced into the game, it was definitely an OP tank. But I think that it has lost some of its capabilities. I just feel like the majority of the tanks in super strong can go toe-to-toe with a Chimera. I can pull out a Progetto, I can pull out a Pantera, a Rev, or a Rompanzer, and I think I could easily go toe-to-toe with a Chimera. Like, the Chimera's problem is that it doesn't have great turret armor, and it means when you're poking, it's very common that you do get shot. And even though the Alpha's great, at the end of the day, when you're fighting higher-tiered players, it is going to be a big challenge if they are in mediums that have good armor, that are able to pen through your turret with AP ammo. That's where you're going to struggle. It's a great tank, and it's still one of the highest-performing mediums in the game. But I don't think it deserves the broken category at this point, just because I feel like it's very similar to the 122 TM in characteristics, but the 122 has the turret armor that I've talked about. For skilled players, I think you can do better in the 122, and I don't think the 122 is anything game-breaking about it, so I'm not going to put either of them in the unfair category. But I still think the Chimera is an amazing tank, very fun. I just wish it wasn't as kind of boxy. That's the only thing I can say. Then the Defender Mark 1, again, easy, super strong. The Defender Mark 1 is an incredible tier 8 medium. Honestly, I think the Defender Mark 1 is possibly like in the S tier of super strong. Like if I were to rank all these vehicles, the Defender Mark 1 would go up here because It's on the edge of almost being unfair, but it's not enough. Its hull armor is very weak, like incredibly weak. And if you don't know how to use it properly, you're going to fall apart quickly. But on the flip side, the Defender Mark 1 has some of the strongest turret armor in the game. The spaced armor on the sides of the turret are so thick that you literally can't even pen them on a flat angle, which is crazy. The Defender Mark 1 also features a 700 damage clip. It's incredibly accurate. It's got the accuracy of a Centurion, but it's an autoloader. So you get 0.29 dispersion with a gun that does 700 damage, dumps it incredibly fast, has great gun depression. Overall, the Defender Mark 1 is an incredibly fun and amazing tank. It's the vehicle that I got my IS-6 Fearless in ratings because it's such a good vehicle, and that should tell you something. It's just an amazing tank. I love the Defender Mark 1. The FV-1066 Senlac is going to go into the good category. There's nothing amazing about the tank, but there's also nothing that I would say are bad. It's got solid DPM, decent mobility, and it is a fun vehicle to mess around with. But in terms of its like capabilities, you're not going to do anything crazy in the vehicle. I'd say the FE301 is quite a bit better. In fact, the FE301 is going to make it into the super strong category. The Senlac has some advantages here and there, but the FE is just better. The FE301 features more damage per minute. It has much better armor on the hull. You're not going to worry about getting HE'd. The best way to describe the FE301 is it is a medium tank with light tank camo, and literally, like, 3,000 DPM is crazy. You don't realize how much that is until you look at the mediums. The FE301 has the highest DPM for medium tanks in the game if you compare it to mediums and lights. That is insane. And because of that, it's such a good vehicle. So I actually think the FE301 is super strong. Definitely deserves to sit in that position. Very, very fun vehicle to mess around with. The GSOR 1008. Well, we have another contender for the unfair category. The GSOR is a double-shot version of the Death Star. That's the best way to describe it. In 2 seconds or 2.5 seconds, I think the intro clip is, it is able to deal 880 damage. And it's got very good pen, really nasty alpha, 440 per shot. It also has incredibly good standard pen. It's got great gun depression at 8 or 10 degrees. It's flexible, it's fast, and it's got a super dangerous gun. And while I think the Death Star is very dangerous, I also think the GSOR is just as dangerous because the GSOR isn't as large. It's not as a, hey, shoot me target. So I think that the GSOR is incredible, and yeah, that's where I think it goes. It's just such a fun tank. I easily average over 3K on it just because of the damage output it has. Turtle Mark 1, the 2-tel. Yeah, we're gonna put it into the good category. After Wargaming has buffed the armor, it's finally, like, not an awful tank. But at the same time, I still wouldn't recommend anybody to go out of their way and buy it. It's better than, like, the tanks in Workable, I think, but again, it's the same case as the Elephant. It's the same case as the AT-15 with the 32-pounder. Like, just don't bother with these tanks. I would highly recommend to go for the vehicles in the strong category to the super strong. These are the vehicles that, if you like their capabilities, you can play, but I wouldn't recommend to go out of your way to get them. That's kind of what I say. Like, I still like the AMX Defender, and I actually really like the T-34-3, so I would definitely play, like, the 34-3, you know, on my own will. But at the same time, I would much rather play the STG Guard, which we'll be breaking into later, over 34-3, and that's kind of how I see this. So, the Astron Rex is an auto-loading Tier 8 American medium. And we've actually started with the American vehicles. There's a lot of American premiums, a lot more than you'd think. And the Astron Rex, I actually like a lot. I don't think it's in the super strong category, but I definitely think it deserves strong. Yeah, I think it does 870-ish damage in the clip, which is quite nice. And it's got a decent amount of mobility, a troll hull and turret. And when you combine all that together, it makes a rather strong vehicle. The only reason the Astron isn't as great is because vehicles like the Progetto 46 and the Skoda T27 exist, but they don't deal nearly the amount of damage the Astron does in the dumping time. I just wish the Astron had a bit faster of a intro clip, and it would be a little bit higher up. But still, it's a very good gun, and it's actually a really fun tank to mess around with. So I actually think it's in the strong category. I got no problems with it. The Chrysler K, I'm putting it in the broken. I actually think the Chrysler K is absolutely nasty. Sorry, had to have another sip of my soda. The Chrysler features ridiculous mobility. It's got similar mobility to that of a VK4502A, but the difference is that the Chrysler has way better armor. Its upper plate is not going to be penned by really any tier 8s or even tier 9s. Its turret isn't going to be penned by tier 8s or 9s. And the gun, which used to be rather mediocre on its pen, got buffed and now has 270 mils of APCR pen, which is more than enough to cut through any tier 9s, tier 8s, whatever you're dealing with. It's more than enough. Pair that with the 10 degrees of gun depression over the edges of this vehicle, and yeah, it's quite a dangerous opponent. I think people really sleep on the Chrysler K. I think that 2 of them in a platoon is literally one of the most toxic things you can deal with. It's one of the only rear turreted heavies in tier 8 that actually works. And because of that, it's crazy fun. It is definitely sticking in the broken category for me. A lot of American tanks are actually really, really good, so this is going to be an interesting one in general for me to rank as a nation. The M3O, we're going to put that one into strong. The M3O is a great tank. It's got a very dangerous gun, which has a slightly faster intra-clip than vehicles like the Samwa, 2.8 seconds instead of 3, and it does 310 damage per shot. It's got okay accuracy and pretty solid turret armor as long as you're hiding the lower half. Its hull is pretty poor, but in general, it's got a strong armor profile going for it, and a pretty dangerous gun. The reason I'm putting the M3O in strong is because I'm sliding the Scepter into super strong. See, the Scepter is the exact same on every stat apart from one, and that is reversing capabilities. You see, the Scepter features the reserve track mechanic that the Concept 1B, the M6 Yo, and other vehicles in that nature have. And because of this, it means even when the Scepter gets tracked, it can still reverse at 7 kilometers per hour, and that's huge. It means that the Scepter is able to have that big benefit over the M3O. They're both exactly the same, but the Scepter just has a flat advantage over it. That's as simple as it is. So I think the Scepter deserves to be one position higher because of that mechanic. And again, same armor and everything. I love the gun on the Scepter. Autoloaders are super dangerous, so I do think that tank deserves the super strong category. The M4Yo also makes it into super strong. I hated on the tank when it was first released. I didn't hate on it to the point of calling it trash, but I definitely did not give it a overwhelmingly positive review, is the best way to word it. It was probably a 3 out of 5, but I'm moving my review to a 4.5 out of 5. I really, really like the Scepter. Not the Scepter, sorry, the M4Yo. The vehicle features a 4-shell autoloader, and each shell does, 310 damage per shot? It's got really good pen, and most importantly, ridiculously good armor. Its upper plate is very strong, but the turret is ridiculous. It's upwards of 300 millimeters around the entire front of the turret. Even if you turn it, it's still upwards of 260. Not only that, but the rear of the turret is still upwards of 220, and that's because the armor kind of encloses around the vehicle, wraps around it. It's an oscillating turret, so it's got really good armor. The hatch is really the only weakness when hull down, and if you know how to wiggle it properly, it's fine. Plus, while people are shooting at that hatch, you have an autoloader, which has a slightly faster reload than any other single-shot style gun. So let's say you have a Tiger II, which has 2,500 DPM, a 310 alpha. It's got like an 8-something second reload. Well, the M4Yo has a maybe, I think maybe it's a 6.8 second reload or something like that. So you've got a slightly faster reload. And the advantage is that in the M4Yo, you're always going to out-reload the single-shot vehicle. And then if you simply back up and you take the 14 seconds it takes to reload your whole clip, you are then back to having more effective DPM. So you get this big burst of high DPM, and then you get to reload for a little downtime, recharge, and then you get this high burst of DPM again. It's like the Minnow on World of Tanks PC. And because of that, the M4Yo is actually really strong, because if you know how to play it properly, you can position it in a way that you'll get out your shells, you'll back up with one teammate next to you, nobody can push you, and then you'll have the advantage over whoever you're fighting once again. Pair that with a very, very good level of penetration, decent on movement accuracy, and fantastic gun depression, plus very good mobility, and I was completely wrong on my original stance when it comes to the M4Yo. I actually really like the tank, and I think it's a fantastic tier 8 that people seriously underrate. The M6A200 EXP, ooh, the M6 Experimental is a tricky one. Do I put it in strong or super strong? Strong or super strong? We're going to put it in strong. I think over the years it has lost a bit of its effectiveness, and the latest update was definitely a huge chunk off. The armor on the M6 Experimental is known for being incredible. Its turret is quite good, but it's really the hull that's known for the armor. Its upper plate is upwards of 290 millimeters thick, and the lower plate's like 280, which is crazy. The problem is, with the latest changes of the game, Basically, if you're running Cali on your heavies, you can actually cut through the upper plate now, which is rather disappointing. Thankfully, the gun on the EXP is really good. It's got fantastic levels of pen, and it's got really good alpha at 400 plus decent aiming time. So the EXP, in terms of the gun, it's the same as the T-34 gun. It's really good in that situation. But in terms of the armor, it's still way better than the T-34, at least for the hull, not for the turret. So I really like the EXP. It still features 10 degrees of gun depression and everything. It's a strong tank, and it's still one of my more favorite tier 8s in the game, just because of how much I loved playing it when I was younger. But I will definitely admit, over the years, it's decreased its effectiveness. So it's going to be in strong and not super strong. We're going to move to the T-34, and we also have the T-34 1776. Okay, I just spent a couple seconds revising where the tanks are in this list, just because of the fact the EXP is a hull-down style heavy, and so is the T-34 and all these other vehicles. So I lined them up so it made a little bit more sense in the rankings. So we did the M6, now we move on to the T-34 and the 34 1776, because they are the exact same vehicle. We are going to put these tanks into the strong category as well. And that's because the armor on the T-34 is turret-based, and it's enough armor that it doesn't really matter what happens to pen values. The turret is always going to be strong. The T-34 is the same turret as the T-30 in Tier 9, and the T-30 in Tier 9 is a pain in the butt to pen alone, so you can imagine how strong this is at Tier 8. When you pair that with the fact that T-34 has the highest pen values for a Tier 8 with 300 millimeters of premium, plus the AP just got even better. Yeah, it's just a really, really dangerous gun in general, and the vehicle is very hard to counter when it's used in a proper holding position. Now, its hull is pretty bad, but thankfully it does have a lot of hit points, so yeah, that's pretty good. And it's got, as I said, a gun that does not bounce. So that's the thing for the T-34. It's really nasty when it gets hull down. Plus, it's got great credit coefficients, so it's going into the strong category. The T-32 is also going to go into the strong category. It was either strong or super strong, but I don't think it has enough to make it in the super strong for me. The T-32 turret laughs at the T-34s. Like, the T-32 turret is probably the strongest in Tier 8. You will not pen it at all. Even the hatch, good luck. It is so stupid strong. The problem with the T-32 is that the gun is actually dookie balls. It is 0.38 dispersion for a 300 alpha gun. If it had decent accuracy, it would be great, but it doesn't. It has really, really bad accuracy. And even though Wargaming buffed the pen on the tank, it still doesn't make the gun any more accurate. And that's the only problem I have with the T-32. Everything else is great. The armor is actually fantastic on the upper plate, and the armor on the turret is very good, and if you're using it hull down, it's actually, like, impossible to fight. You know what? I am going to put it in super strong. I take it back. I think the T-32 really is. After they buffed the premium pen, I'm just, like, in my brain, I'm trying to think of how I counter a T-32 when I fight it. And I'm just thinking of when you're in a hull-down position, the T-32 is literally impossible to deal with. The T-34, you can still try and hatch it, or maybe cut through the turret cheeks. It's got a long reload. The T-32 has actually good upper plate armor, and a really strong turret, plus decent DPM. I'm going to leave it in super strong. I actually think it deserves to be in that slot after the buffs. The T-26E5 Sheriff is a vehicle that I've had a rocky past with. I hated it when it was first released. Then I liked it. Yes. And now I'm kind of ambivalent because it's definitely been outdated over the years. I'll still put it in the strong category. It's got solid DPM, great turret armor. It's kind of like a T-32 turret. The problem is it just doesn't have much alpha damage, and its hull armor is pretty mid. I'm going to put it in strong. There's really nothing amazing about it, but it's a good vehicle overall, and if you want a tank to hold with, it's definitely one of those vehicles that you will do pretty good in. The Pershing, we're going to put it in strong. I don't think the Pershing's as good as the Indian Panzer or the other higher DPM mediums. It's good. It's got some turret armor, but its hull is really bad. It's just not that hard of a tank to counter, to be completely honest. I really like the DPM the Pershing has, but the other characteristics of it don't exemplify enough to bring it into the super strong category for me. But it's still a great tank. It's still got really good DPM, and I still like playing in it, but I just don't think it has enough to really make it go any higher. T-25 Pilot 1, we'll also put it in the strong category. I think people really disregard the T-25 Pilot 1. Where the Pershing has mediocre turret armor, the T-25 Pilot actually has really good turret armor. The mantlet is around 300 millimeters thick, which means essentially you're not going to pen the vehicle if you hit the mantlet. When you pair that with a similar style gun to the Pershing with solid DPM, decent accuracy, and good penetration, it's a strong tank. Again, it doesn't make it to super strong, but I think that people were way too harsh on the Pilot one when it was released into the game. I actually think it's a pretty fun vehicle. I made a review on it just a couple weeks ago. I actually like it a lot, so I'm not going to hate on it at all. I think it's definitely better than the vehicles in the good category. I would play it over any of these tanks down here. The T-2064 Super Pershing, I'm going to put it into good. Its armor is solid, but at the same time, it's kind of in the case of the Type 59 where it's been outdated. Like, it's got good pen, but its DPM isn't great, and its accuracy is really derpy, and I hate that about the tank. And while its armor is okay, its track wheels are terrible, its roof is weak. It's got all the same downsides the Fixer does, but the difference is the Fixer's upper plate is much stronger, where their lower plate's weaker, and the Fixer has a higher alpha damage, and that's where the Fixer wins, is that the Fixer's alpha allows to trade with other players, and you have good armor. The Super Pershing really doesn't have the good armor, so because of that, I mean, it has good armor, but it's just not as good as the Fixers for what it is and how you work it, so I just think the Super Pershing is, that's kind of how I'm putting it. It's good, but definitely nothing better than good. The T-28 Defender, I'm putting it super strong. I think the T-28 Defender is an overlooked vehicle that is a lot better than you'd think it is. It features really good DPM for what it is. Again, the reason I say that is because it's very similar to the M4Yo in that regard, where both tanks have a burst of nice DPM, and then they sit back and they reload for a little bit, and then they poke once again. That's what you do in the T-28 Defender. So it has similar DPM to other heavy tanks. The nice thing is that it has 10 degrees of gun depression, a lot of hit points. Normally, tank destroyers don't have 1500 HP, but the T-28 Defender does because it's more of a heavy tank, and that's great. So it's got solid armor frontally, a really, really good chunk of damage output because of its clip, and it's got decent DPM. It's actually a very scary tank to fight. If you know what you're doing properly in the T-28 Defender, you can do very well. I actually have a 7-kill Rezani in the vehicle, so I like the tank a lot. I actually think it's really good, so I'm going to put it super strong. We got the T-28 Proto, and yeah, we'll put it in... I'll put it in good. It's the same thing as the Elephant, once again. It's slow, but it's actually not the worst on speed. It used to be like 20, and now it goes like 26, so that's at least nice. And it's got really good DPM, very good penetration, and actually decent armor, but it's not enough to make it into the strong category. I would rather drive any of the vehicles in strong before I drive a T-28 Proto. I'm not going to say the Proto's bad, though, because it's not. Like, it's actually a decent vehicle if you know what you're doing. It's just nothing crazy. T-28 goes into workable. Again, it's not awful, but it's really only got a gun and some frontal protection. It also has a decent chunk of HP, but doesn't really mean much when everything else is pretty mid. Falls into the same category of the Ferdinand, where just, I don't hate on the T-28, but it's definitely not a vehicle that I'm like, oh boy, I get to play it. Ooh, I'm so happy. No. It's a workable vehicle at best. It's close to the trash category, but I don't think it's actually awful. I just don't think it's good at all. T-49 Fearless and the T-49 are basically the same, and we're going to be putting both of them in the... we'll put them in the strong category. I really like the T-49, and even though it is a very troll tank, you might say, well, why'd you put the Caliban down in workable if you're going to put a similar style vehicle in strong? And it's because the T-49 has a couple advantages. A, it's much more mobile. B, it has much better camo. It has better gun depression, and most importantly, you don't rely on really penning your shots with the T-49. Half the time, I'll just HE splash someone in the T-49, deal 300, drive away, and do it again 15 seconds later. And that's enough to annoy people, bleed them out, and kill them. And when I do pen a heat shell, or I do pen an HE, it absolutely juices. Having the mobility on the T-49 to flank and get around your opponents is huge, and it definitely gives you the capabilities you need. And because of that, the T-49 definitely makes it into the strong category. I think in a decent player's hands, the T-49 is actually a rather underrated and and quite strong vehicle. So we're going to put it in strong. The 90mm on the T49, it's good. I don't know why you would use it, especially when like the Black Dog exists, but it's actually not a bad gun. It's got solid DPM. It's got pretty good pen, like 287 mils. It's actually a really good gun. It's just, again, why are you running it on a T49 when it's meant to use the 150 and it's like one of the most exciting guns in the game? So that's kind of how I see the 90mm, but I wouldn't recommend to run it. The T54 E2 Shark obviously makes its way into super strong. It's an absolutely incredible vehicle. Great gun depression, 10 degrees. A solid gun with 300 alpha, and it also features really good mobility. And when you pair all these things together with the armor it features, it's an amazing tank. I remember when the Shark was first released and people were like, it's not that good. I was like, what are you talking about? This vehicle is absolutely insane. It's the Tiger II of hull-down heavies. It's absolutely amazing. And because of that, yeah, the Shark is an incredible tank and easily makes it into super strong. The T69, I'm going to put it in strong. It's got a really good gun. You know, a lot of people don't realize that the T67 has, like, ridiculous pen values. You make your way over to Americans, and there it is. Look at the pen this thing has. 283. That's a lot. That's a lot of pen. And it's got pretty good DPM. With food and everything equipped, you're sitting at around 2,500 DPM. With an autoloader that is 2,500 DPM, a fast clipping time, and great pen, it's very good. Problem is it's not very fast, and it doesn't feature great armor. But the gun, very, very strong, and because of that, I think it deserves the category we've put it in. T77, I mean, do I even need to really explain much? It's got a double shot, 360 or 380 damage shot gun, which means you deal 760 in 2 shots. You have ridiculously troll armor. You have good mobility, great gun depression. For some reason, it has 10 degrees, even though it should only have 8. Yeah, the T77 in every regard is an absolutely stupid vehicle that is impossible to almost fight if it's a decent player behind it. It's almost hard to do bad in the T77. I am averaging 3,200 damage in the vehicle, which is insane. I've got 50 games in it with that level of damage, which is just crazy. So yeah, the T77 is definitely making it into the unfair category. T95E2, we'll put it in good. It's better than the vehicles in workable because it actually has solid DPM. It has good pen, really good pen. And it has okay armor where you can get a bounce or two, but that's as far as I'm willing to go. The Type 59 Patton is much better in almost every way apart from, I guess, mobility, but everything else the 59 Patton wins at. I don't see a reason why you'd want a T95E2 when you can get vehicles that are better, but it's not like the worst thing ever. You know, it's an okay vehicle, and that's what I'll say about it. There's really not much special about it. TS5, I'm going to put it in strong. I actually think the TS5 is a strong vehicle. Like, it's got 340 millimeters of base heat. And judging that you can run calibrated on it, if I'm not mistaken, it's going to have 383 millimeters of heat pen with Cali, which is kind of ridiculous. 384 mils of heat pen. Like, I'm averaging decent in it. I've only played 4 games, but the gun has really good DPM. It has the highest pen in Tier 8. And when you pair all that together with pretty troll armor, I think the TS5 is a strong tank. I actually do. I think out of all the super slow vehicles, it's definitely one of the stronger, and that's because it doesn't rely on high DPM. It relies on the fact that it has higher alpha, and unlike the T28, it actually has decent armor. Attach isn't nearly as big of a weak spot, so yeah, the TS5 is actually an okay vehicle. The TS60, on the other hand, now that goes in the super strong. The TS60, oh man, I'm almost, you know what, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put it into broken. I actually think the TS60 is. The TS60 features basically similar characteristics to a Chrysler K. That's why I'm putting it up here. The Chrysler is known for the armor, where the TS60 has similar armor, not as good. Its upper plate's really good, and the turret is strong, but the side scraping capabilities are definitely worse. But the TS60 features a gun that has just shy of 3,000 DPM, 380 damage per shot, and that means you rip out damage like crazy. So the TS60, it's got a much better gun, and because of that, you have the ability to rip out damage, where the Chrysler is more of just a pushing vehicle. I think that, yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I actually really like the TS60, and I had crazy good stats in it when I played it, so I think I'm going to leave it in the unfair category. I think it is actually a really, really nasty vehicle. The IS-2SH, workable. Lucky that I'm putting it in workable, but it's going to the workable. The vehicle features decent consumables now. It has tungsten, it has super speed boost, it has all the stuff, you know, reactive. I think reactive and tungsten really saves it from being awful. It's awful on armor, though. I mean, its upper plate is bad, its side armor is bad, its turret is bad, its lower plate is bad. And when you pair that, it's just not great. I mean, it has 7 degrees of gun depression, which is all right for a Soviet heavy, and it has one of the more accurate Soviet guns, but it's still nothing to brag about. IS-3 Defender. I'm going to put the IS-3 Defender in super strong. I think after Wargaming buffed the tank, it's quite an incredible vehicle. Its upper plate is now about 250 millimeters thick, which is really good, actually. Like, on flat ground, 250, it's quite troll to penetrate the IS-3 Defender after they buff the armor. And it gets even better when you realize the vehicle has 7 degrees of gun depression. And it gets even better when you realize it has a 3-shell autoloader, which deals 1,200 damage. Now, it's got a long interclip. It's like a 7.1 second interclip or something like that. It's a while. But it's still much faster than a 12-second time it takes on, for example, an IS-5 or something of that category. So it's a really scary tank when you're able to get hull down. It's got really good mobility and solid armor. It's actually a really fun tank. And while the gun is absolutely trash bags on its accuracy, because it has the mobility and the gun depression, it's definitely one of the strongest Soviet-style heavies in the game. Oof, I never ever want to do another tier 8 tier list, guys. We still got like another 20 tanks left to go. Alright, IS-3, it just got buffed on the armor, and the gun's pretty good. Mobility's pretty good, but it only has 5 degrees of gun depression. So, where am I going to put it? I'm going to put it in good. I would put it pretty similar in characteristics to the 112 Glacial and the upgraded BZ-166. I just don't think it deserves to get into the strong category. It's not bad. You know what? I take that back. I just remembered it as tungsten. I forgot about that. With the armor buff and the tungsten paired with adrenaline, I actually do think it makes it into strong. I completely forgot about the tungsten. So, I take it back. If tungsten didn't exist, I would have put it in the good. But tungsten is great because you pair that with adrenaline and you're able to rip out damage like crazy. IS-5, we'll put it in good. Where did it go? Oh, I didn't mean to put it in trash. We'll put it in good. First of all, it's like 1,500 gold. It's literally one of the cheapest tanks in the game, and because of that, it's literally like free, which is great. I need to make another IS-5 video. The vehicle has decent mobility, a top speed of 42. It's got classic Soviet gun, and the other nice thing about the IS-5 is that it's got decent turret armor and an okay upper plate. It's kind of like the IS-8 of tier 8s, you know, on the armor. It's not bad, it's not good, it's all right. I just wish that Wargaming would buff the mobility to 50. If they did, I think the tank would be so fun. But unfortunately, right now it only goes 42, so we're leaving it in the good category. There's just nothing spectacular about the tank. The IS-6 and IS-6 Fearless are the same on stats, and we are going to be putting the IS-6 into strong. The armor on the IS-6 is actually way better than people give it credit for. It's very hard to penetrate on the upper plate. Even the lower plate's quite troll. The turret's quite strong, and while the gun is classic Soviet, basing off the armor and the characteristics that it features because of that, it's actually really, really fun in that regard, and I thoroughly enjoyed actually playing in the IS-6 after they buffed it. I don't know if I'd put it in super strong, just because of the fact it's not going to be great up against tier 9s, but I think strong is a fair category to put it in. The ISU-130, oh yeah, that's easily making it in the super strong. After the changes the vehicle has received, it's an incredible tank. It was already a decent vehicle before with the premium AP that did more damage than standard, but now that it has tungsten, holy juice. Like, it can deal the same damage as an ISU-152, but with a faster reload by quite a bit and much better accuracy. .308 dispersion, especially with the refined gun changes, is insane. So yeah, the ISU-130 is an absolutely bonkers vehicle. I absolutely loved playing it after the changes, and yeah, it's making it into the super strong category. The ISU-152, well, it's got a 122 and a 152. I know nothing about the 122, and I don't know why you'd use it, so I'll put it in the, like, workable whatever. Don't really care. You know, I'm not even going to rate it. Like, if you're running the 122 on the ISU, you're just a doofus. So we got the 150, and it's going in the broken. It's going in the broken. The fact that the ISU-152 gets 3,200 DPM with a gun that has over 300 millimeters of standard pen, 640 damage per shot, it's just not fair. I am still a strong advocate for nerfing the vehicle. I made a video years ago saying it needs to be nerfed on either its DPM or maybe a bit of its pen, and, well, nothing's happened. So I'm still a strong advocate for the gun on that tank is too dangerous. I would love if Wargaming just took away maybe 400 DPM. 2800, 2700 DPM would still be fine, but at least then it wouldn't feel like you're literally ripping your teeth out trying to fight the vehicle. The fact that it has 640 alpha, but yet the same reload as an IS series vehicle is stupid. Shouldn't exist like that. That's why it's making it into the unfair category. Absolutely stupid vehicle. What else do we have? The K2. This vehicle is a free Soviet-style heavy, and it's going to go into the strong category. Kind of the same as an IS-6 in terms of armor. Similar overall. Its turret is better than the IS-6, but its hull is a bit worse, and it's quite a bit less mobile. So it goes in the strong. It's got an okay gun, Soviet-style everything once again, but yeah, I mean, it's just another Soviet heavy. What else do I need to say? KV-4? We'll put it in good. I like the KV-4. It's a fun tank. It's got a decent gun, especially if you're running the ZIS. It's got really, really good pen. But its armor is rather lackluster. And again, with the latest changes to the game, Heat has a lot more pen, making the KV-4's effective armor a little bit worse. The KV-5, on the other hand, oh yeah, it's making it into the broken category. The KV-5 is just an absolutely insane vehicle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we have 14 tanks in the broken category at this point in Tier 8. That's a decent amount. That's about 10% of the Tier 8s in the game are in the broken category, which is a lot. It's nothing crazy, though. The KV-5, I mean, as I said, it's just crazy. It's got a top speed of 40. Its armor is so troll. Even I struggle to pen the KV-5 armor because it's not a consistent flat spot. The turret is the weakest part, but the problem is the turret has these massive tumors growing out of it in front of it, and if you hit the tumor at the wrong angle, they bounce off, even if you load gold. And the hatches are troll, and when you pair that with the fact that KV-5 weighs 100 tons and it's driving at you, and it's got solid DPM, and now that they buffed the pen on it, it's a crazy tank. It's the highest win rate right up next to the ground tank in Tier 8. People seriously underrate the KV-5. I don't understand why other YouTubers don't realize the capabilities that vehicle has. It is absolutely insane, and that's why it's making it into that category. We have the LT-432, which I'm going to put in strong. It's got a solid gun and really good mobility. It's got reverse speed of, what, 28? It might be, I'm going to say it's 30 reverse. Let me double check. I'm pretty sure it's 30. That's like the major gimmick of the LT-432 is the ridiculous reverse speed it features. I'm going to the wrong spot. We have to go here, and yeah, 30. I mean, that's crazy. 30 is insane. When you pair that with the fact that it's got a classic Soviet medium-style gun, it's actually quite good overall. So I like the LT-432. I think it's a very fun vehicle. And yeah, I mean, its armor troll. It's basically a Tier 8 T100 LT. It's a little bit larger, but in general, it's still a fun tank. The Object 590, oh, this is an easy super strong. I think people are really underrating the 590. I really enjoyed when the vehicle got released. And it was just released like a month or two ago, but I really enjoyed it. The armor, I knew it was going to be good when I saw it in testing. And if Wargaming kept it the way it was, which they did, I knew it was going to be great. The upper plate on the 590 is similar to that of a T62A in Tier 10, where you're going to get bounces from Tier 7s, as Tier 9s will on the T62A. But its armor is very good on the upper plate, and its turret is incredible. I think the best way to describe a 590 is a CS52 lease in Tier 8. It's got solid gun depression at 8 degrees, it's got a nice alpha of 290, it's got decent penetration, decent accuracy, and really good armor. Its turret hull down is almost impossible for the average Tier 8, or even some Tier 9s to cut through, which is crazy when you think about it. I really did well in the 590. I'm sitting at like a 90% win rate. I mean, I played it on this account, so we can actually see what my stats were in the vehicle. But I really enjoyed playing this tank. Yeah, 90%, 2700. Very good vehicle, super duper underrated. Object 252, we're going to put this in super strong. It's kind of just a better version of the other Soviet heavies and the Chinese variants. It's got 420 alpha, which is quite nice alone. When you pair that with the fact that its upper plate is ridiculously strong, it's got a ridiculously good turret armor profile as well, decent mobility, and super troll armor on the sides. It's basically an IS-7 down at Tier 8. It's a really good tank. There's not much else I really need to explain about it. 274A and ST62 version 2 are both going to make it into the I'm going to put the Object 274A into the strong category, and you know it's same for the ST62 version too. Both vehicles feature decent guns. The 274A gun is better than the ST62s, and so is the gun depression, but the turret armor is worse, and so is the on-movement gun dispersion on move. So because of that, both vehicles have their slight advantages and disadvantages. I actually really like the 274A when it got released. I really like the Alpha. It's a different take on a Soviet-style gun. The ST-62 has the same old Soviet gun as every other vehicle, but its armor is very troll to penetrate, and its gun is kind of wonky. So I like it. I like the armor. It's a fun tank, so we'll put it in strong. STG, I'm putting it in super strong. People can disagree with my opinion. They can say, oh, how can you put it in there? Well, I really like the STG guard. It's got an almost 86% win rate on my main account with 2,700 average damage for like 300 games. I love the tank. Every time I play it, it's great. It's got light tank camo when sitting still, and it's super low down, which means you can get in and out of positions, hiding your vehicle, not getting detected. When you pair that with the fact it's got a very accurate 400 alpha gun, I really like the STG, and I know I'm biased, but I do well in it, and because of that, I think it deserves to be in super strong, so that's where I'm putting it. The SU-101 has really good heat pen. It's got decent damage per minute, but I think it needs more. Armor is mid, mobility is good, but the SU-101 is in the good category. It's better than the Ferdinand in these vehicles down here, but not by much is what I'll say. Like, the gun has really good pen, and that's its saving grace. Everything else is rather mid about the vehicle. It's just that it's still mobile, it's still got a decent gun, and because of that, you can get out some decent results. The SU-130PM, this one goes in super strong, easy choice there. I mean, the SU-130PM, it's got super good alpha damage, 460. And unlike the Scorpion G, it's quite a smaller vehicle. It's a lot harder to pen with high explosive. It's got much better camo values than the Scorpion G, and it's got better pen because, once again, heat just got buffed. I mean, let's go take a look at just how ridiculous the pen is on the SU-130. I don't even know if I've played it on this account yet. No, I haven't, but 360, absolutely insane. I mean, that's insane. That's tier 10 levels of pen on a tier 8. So the SU-130 really is just the jack of all trades when it comes to lightly armored TDs. It's everything the grill wishes it could be, which is just fantastic. So I really like the SU-130. The T-2020, I'm going to put it in strong. I actually think it's a rather underrated Soviet heavy. It's not as good as the 252U or the Type 57, but its upper plate is actually really good because it got buffed, and the turret's all right. It's just that the tank's kind of ugly, and its turret isn't nearly as good as a lot of the other Soviet turrets in general. You know, it's not a rounded turret. It's kind of like an angled turret. So if you turn it side on, it becomes flat and very easy to pen. But the armor frontally is really good because of how steep it is on the angling. It's actually a decent tank, but it is still a rather Soviet-style heavy, so nothing crazy. T-44-100, workable. No doubt in my mind. It's the same as the IS-2SH in that category, where it got tungsten, it got adrenaline, or it had adrenaline, but it got all the special abilities. It got reactive, blah, blah, blah. The gun on the vehicle is the same as the T-44-100s, but the thing you have to remember is that the vehicle has 2 degrees less gun depression, less DPM than the T-44. Actually, it might be 3. No, it's 2 degrees less gun depression than the T-44. Just in general, the T-44-100 is a worse T-44. And the T-44 is only in the good category. The tank isn't anything crazy. The gun's kind of eh. So the fact that the T-44 makes it in the good shows that the T-44-100 only makes it into the workable spot. The T-44 at the 122, you knew there was a reason I put the trash category. And it was simply because of one vehicle, and that was the T-44 at the 122. It is the worst gun in the game. It's pretty freaking bad. Just don't run it unless you really like Panel. So we're going to leave it there. 2 vehicles left to go, ladies and gentlemen. The T-54 Lightweight and the T-54 Mod 1. T-54 Lightweight is going to make it into the good category. It's got a good amount of mobility. It's got high alpha. It's got a Soviet-style 280 alpha or something like that, so it's got a nice gun there. It's got decent penetration, and its armor is okay. But there's nothing really amazing about the tank. It's just an alright vehicle that you'll get the job done in if you need to grind it. And T-54 Mod 1 is going to go in the exact same situation. The Mod 1 is just not that good anymore. It's, again, flat better than the T-44-100, but the armor is not nearly as effective as it used to be. And because of that, the T-44-100 is just worse. But the Mod 1 is just, as I said, it's just not as good as it used to be. Back in the day, it was amazing. It was even considered OP by people like Bushka because of the fact that the armor was great. But as pen values have increased, this tank's effectiveness has not. And that's the best way to describe it. It's still a good tank, but it's not anything it used to be. If we were to rank the Vipera and the Schwarzpanzer 58, because of the fact some of you might be watching this tier list after it is released, I guess we could put the Vipera. I actually tested both of these tanks. The Vipera I would put into the strong category, and the Schwarzpanzer I would also put there. That's about the best I can do. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is my tier list. And honestly, it's pretty even overall. We got a lot of different categories here. Let me zoom out. I mean, I actually can't. Like, this is how much I have to zoom out here for you guys to be able to see everything. There you go. That's your entire tier list. It's kind of goofy, but that's what we're looking at. So, yeah. For some of you that have really bad screen quality, you might not be able to read this, but hey, maybe you should watch the video then. But if you want me to break into the parts, we got broken and super strong here. And then we have strong, good, workable, and trash. That is 150 whatever vehicles. This video took a while to make, so if you enjoyed this video, please consider smashing that subscribe button down below. I will not be making one of these for another year or two, but I figured I might as well get it over with, rip it off like a band-aid while I can. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.